them to be good thinkers.
I'm hoping that later on they remember me as just the teacher that they can relate to and the teacher that cared for them. It's not always fun and games, so my classroom might look very colorful and very fun, but we do have those difficult conversations and we do have those topics that are deep, and I hope they remember those things too.
I do want that feeling to go with them where they're like they enjoyed middle school. You know what I mean? I feel like middle school gets a bad rep sometimes. Like everybody's like, oh, middle school. I remember middle school, but I want the kids that are in my class at least to have some good memories of, you know, some positive times and some good experiences.
I want them to remember that they mattered, whether it was just me that cared about them or that they always had somebody believing in them.
I want my students to remember just like having fun, being in a classroom where they felt safe and welcome every day. I want them to not only feel welcome from me, but from each other. So like building relationships among themselves and making a really strong community within my classroom. I want them to remember that feeling.
In my class, I have a motto, which is be kind and be academic. And I hope that's how they remember me, because I want them to remember me as being kind.
Thank you. It's mine. I made a handout. Oh, this is yours. Yeah. Oh. All the information I have about cuts and.
So I'm planning to, depending on what time it is, I'm
I
gonna
don't have good information. I
read as long as on the agenda, keep it 8 p.m. Because,
That's what I.
no, not my job. We can't leave.
Oh, okay. Great. Is everybody ready? Are we ready? Are we ready, Rebecca? Are you ready for whatever?
For what am I doing? What am I doing today?
I know, I'm the same way.
You're chairing the meeting.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna show up today, but I was gonna say.
Don't do that to me. Please give me some type of notice, because you're in it. I need to get like my nerve, like, oh my gosh.
You'd be great, and you know what? That's the best way to do it.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our official school board meeting for May 6, 2026. So we call this meeting to order. So let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I'd like to acknowledge, give an acknowledgement of our tribal lands. We gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today.
Let's also give a moment of silence for those who have given their lives in service to their country. Thank you. Dr. Albright, may we have a roll call?
Here.
Here.
Heather Benavides,
Here.
Kia Bowman, here.
Here.
Here. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and consider adoption of May 6, 2026 Board of Education meeting agenda. We also want to make sure that we do have a change in our agenda tonight, and we'll ask for a motion the agenda item 9.1, the spring review of 2025-26 school improvement and transformation plans for 20 APS schools will be moved immediately following Section 6, Student Outcome Focused Governance. Do I have a motion and a second?
I move to amend the May 6, 2026 Board of Education meeting agenda to move section 9 to right after section 6. This is Member Jackson.
And I'll second. This is Member Benavides.
Board Member Jackson, motion to adopt today's meeting agenda with modifications, and Board Member Benavides. Can I have a vote, please?
To clarify, I'm not sure my mic is on, but the motion was to move all of section 9, so that's 9.1 and 9.2.
I will amend my amendment. I will amend my amendment to include just section 9.1. Thank you.
Board Member Benavides.
I will second the amendment to the amendment.
Thank you very much. Janelle Astorga,
Yes.
Rebecca Betson,
Yes.
Heather Benavides,
Yes.
Orikia Bowman, Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito.
Yes. And now we want to consider approval of the minutes from the Board of Education meeting on April 15th, 2026. Do I have a motion and a second?
I move that we approve the minutes of the April 15th, 2026 Board of Education meeting. This is Board Member Benavides.
And I second it. This is Board Member Betson.
Board Member Benavides, motion to approve the April 15th Board of Education minutes, and Board Member Benson, second. Can I get a vote?
Janelle Astorga,
Yes.
Betson,
Yes.
Heather Benavides,
Yes.
Orikia Bowman, Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito.
Yes. Now we'll move on to item 4, student outcomes recognition for goal 4, secondary. It's not student recognitions tonight. Instead, Dr. Gonzalez, who is substituting for the superintendent, will make remarks about the schools who have shown gains in goal 4 in secondary. You have the floor.
Madam President, members of the board, good evening. As mentioned, later this evening, we will review progress on interim goal 4.2, which focuses on the skills, habits, and mindsets of our students in grades 6 through 12. Before we move into that discussion, I would like to take a moment to recognize the secondary schools that have shown the greatest growth from September 2025 to spring 2026. The principals here tonight are accepting this recognition on behalf of their entire school communities. We want to recognize the staff, families, and most of all the students who made this growth possible. Principals, when I call your school, please stand so that we can recognize you on behalf of your students and your staff. First, New Futures High School, Principal Michelle Martinez. School on Wheels High School, Principal Wynell Lepsak. Coyote Willow Family School, Principal Adrian Elkins. Van Buren Middle School, Principal Moises Padilla. Next Gen Academy High School, Principal David Lynch. Cleveland Middle School, Principal Amy Lissick. Hoover Middle School, Principal Rebecca Sanchez. E-Academy K-8 School, Principal Daniel Gutierrez. McKinley Middle School, Principal Jenna Bloodworth. Let's give these principals a well-deserved round of applause on behalf of their students. And that, Madam President, concludes our recognition this evening.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to our public forum. And I'll hand that over to our secretary, Board Member Benavides.
Thank you, President Tomorito. We welcome our guests who are joining us for public forum this evening. Thank you for taking the time to participate. When you signed up to speak, you were asked to review the rules and expectations for public forum, which our presiding officer will enforce. Under the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, our meeting agendas must clearly specify the items that will be discussed and voted on. For that reason, public forum is not a dialogue between speakers and board members, but rather an opportunity for the board to hear directly from members of our community. Speakers will be called in the order in which they signed up, whether attending in person or virtually. If you are here with us tonight, please come to the microphone at the back of the room when your name is called. Those joining us online will remain in the virtual waiting room until it is their turn to speak. We have set aside 45 minutes for public forum this evening. If there are 22 or fewer speakers, each person will have 2 minutes to speak. If there are more than 22, each person will have 1 minute. Tonight, we have 11 speakers. When your time has expired, you will be asked to conclude your remarks so we can move on to the next speaker. If you feel you were unable to fully share your message, you're welcome to email the board at boarded@aps.edu. In addition, for those of you attending in person this evening, a representative from our service center is available to assist you. At this time, Mr. Gonzalez, will you introduce the speakers?
Thank you, Board Member Benavides. Our first speaker this evening is in the room, and his name is Daniel Tafoya. Mr. Tafoya, you have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Daniel Tafoya. I spoke several times about a cover-up done by APS staff members of incidents happening at schools. I want to speak one happened this year. A student at an elementary school came in with belt marks all over his body. APS police were called, but yet they ignored and did not do a proper investigation because this student was nonverbal. Other incidents were brought to the APS staff and APS police about the mother abusing this child. Still, nothing was done, no proper investigation. On February 7th, the mother poured gasoline on her two boys, and started an apartment fire. Yet, APS could have prevented this, CYFD could have prevented it, and APD police could have prevented it. I'm asking, when is APS going to stop covering up incidents that are brought to their attention? Last year, a principal dragged out a student, dropped him on his head. She deleted the information the videos that were on the computer, showed the parents. It edited off her phone. It was brought to student services and to APS police, yet not properly investigated. Other EA sleeping at her desk with her pill bottle on the floor, brought to student services, told to APS police. Again, nothing done. She was promoted. Another teacher threw a student off a bookcase. He was promoted. When are we going to investigate these allegations that are brought to your guys' attention and stop ignoring them? Question for Superintendent when she ain't here. She emailed me saying it's inappropriate for her to get involved. When is it appropriate for her to get involved that her staff members, student services, APS police are not doing their job? When is it appropriate for her to get involved? When is it appropriate for you guys to get involved? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is on Zoom. Wilder Griner. Are you there?
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Good day, APS Board of Education. My name is Wilder Griner.
I am a student at Los Padillas Elementary School. It is my pleasure to address you today. Today, I will talk to you about why I protest the PE cuts. First of all, PE is a great source for kids to get off their screens and go touch some grass. Also, I don't belong to a hockey, pickleball, or basketball club, but I learned how to play club sports in my elementary PE class. How could I grow up to be a professional basketball player without being introduced to PE? PE is not the same as recess. In PE, you get to learn the rules of how to be athletic, while recess rules are mostly made of play. Teamwork. No athlete can succeed without understanding the importance of teamwork. I'm smart because of PE. Because when you are dribbling a basketball, you need to make quick decisions. Run, pass, and shoot. Think fast, and get exercise. Score. In summary, APS must not cut any of the PE budget because kids need the skills and exercise. Please sharpen your pencils and figure out how to encourage kids like me to be future athletes. I need PE in school. I need you to allow kids like me to have PE in school. Well, to make sure our generation is healthy and successful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be in the room, Laura Gonzalez, followed by Janet Sayers. You'll have 2 minutes when you begin speaking.
Good evening, APS board members, President Tomarito, and sir, I don't remember your name, I apologize. I am Wilder's PE teacher. I've been his PE teacher for the last 5 years. In those 5 years, I have taught Wilder how to ride a balance bike in first grade. I taught him how to master the big kid bike just last fall. I taught him how to throw a ball in opposition, which uses both sides of the brain, which allows the body to execute smooth, controlled, complex movements, such as reading and writing. Side note, my letters trainer, in my letters training last year, we were told, quote, if you want to help your child learn to read, teach them how to throw and catch a ball. I've allowed Wilder and his classmates to engage in the 7 natural play urges, which every child goes through. These are deep, instinctive patterns of behavior that help a child understand the world. Today, we were rock climbing. In the past, we played pickleball. He's learned how to paddleboard, how to rollerblade, how to square dance. He's taken part in team building activities and some quite spirited team games. And of course, he has spent many a times underneath that parachute, counting and laughing with his friends. Can I take all the credit for what Wilder has become? Absolutely not. Can I take partial credit? Absolutely, yes. And I do believe that if Wilder had only had PE once a week for the past 5 years, the developmental impact that me as a PE teacher that I could have had on him would not have been as strong. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Janet Sayers, followed by Maya Gorham.
Yes, good evening, Madam President, board members, and APS staff and guests. I'll give a big amen to PE. I was quite the tetherball player at Hodgen Elementary School until my mother said she was not going to repair another set of glasses that I kept breaking. But I just wanted to start my comments tonight with a happy Mother's Day to those of you who are mothers, and just acknowledge the significance of the intact family unit when a child is fortunate to have not only a mom, a dad, but grandparents, aunts, uncles, people that are all contributing to their development. As we are fast approaching graduation week. I just wanted to encourage board members again to get a hat out and go work the crowd at your high school graduations, even if it's only 30 minutes where you have your APS board card, let's ask, and just meet the families that are so proud of their kiddos as they're standing in line at Tingley, hoping to get a good seat, but they start lining up at least an hour in advance. The next thing I wanted to do was just give a shout out to the Fine Arts Department, Gina Rachinsky, and the hard work that was done to put on the Metro art exhibit for the entire month of April. I was able to go to the awards, and again, so many families that were so proud of their kiddos, whether they were getting a first, second, third place or a People's Choice Award, Student Choice Award. And lastly, just again, there's so many opportunities to engage with families as they attend end of the year concerts, plays, and other events. Again, thank you for your service, and have a good holiday coming up.
Thank you, Ms. Sayers. Our next speaker is Maya Gorham, followed by John L. Long, sorry. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Good afternoon, APS board members, board president Tom Morito, and Dr. Gonzalez. My name is Maya, and I'm the PE teacher at Susie Reyes Marmon Elementary. Today, I asked my students what they love about PE, and I'd like to read some of their answers to you. These are some messages from my first graders. One said, I like that every time I go to PE, I get to run. I like to run a lot, and we only get to run at recess and PE. Another first grader said, in PE, you get to dance and do gymnastics, and it feels really good in your body. One first grader said, I like that in PE, we get to collaborate and work together with everyone. We've been working on parachute and cooperative games this week, and collaboration was one of our vocabulary words, so I was really proud that she used it there. These are some messages from my third grade class. One third grader said, I think we should have more PE because it's fun, it makes you stronger, and you don't just have to sit in your classroom all day. Another third grader said, if we didn't have PE, we wouldn't have the chance to exercise and make our hearts healthy and strong. One third grader said, I didn't want to go to school today, but then I remembered that I had PE and that we would be dancing and playing with the parachute again. PE is my favorite thing we do here. My last message that I want to share with you is from a third grader who said, in PE, we learn lots of different sports like volleyball, and maybe if we learn enough, one of us can grow up one day to be a champion. PE makes a difference in the lives of our students, and they deserve to have fully funded PE at every school. Before I came to Susie Reyes Marmon, I was at a small school where I got to teach my students PE twice a week. I love my school, but it's too big for one PE teacher to give every student PE twice a week, and so I only see them once a week. Cutting my curriculum in half was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my educational career. I know the difference it makes for students to have regular opportunities to move. We should be looking at ways to give APS Physical Education Department, district leadership, and dedicated funding, not taking resources away. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John L. Long. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Janelle Long, and I'm a single mom to an amazing 13-year-old autistic rock star. And I have some concerns that need to be discussed tonight that no one seems to want to talk about. And if I don't talk about it and advocate for those who can't, I don't know that anyone else will. There seems to be a lack of support for single parents, i.e. specifically extended school year. The school will transport kids for ESY to the location from the student's home, but don't transport them from a daycare facility. I am a single mother. I have to work in order to support myself and my son. So if the child is at home, then that means that there's an adult of some sort at home with that child that could possibly transport the child to the school for ESY. Lack of inclusive programs. There is a lottery for special education needed inclusive programs for the summer, which tells me there's a greater need for more special education programs than are currently being offered. Has anyone thought to reach out to your special education teachers who don't get enough credit as it is to see if any of them would want to work the summer months, since it would be additional income for them? Transportation. My son had to go to a different IGS program in order for it to be a safe location for him due to his eloping. Our home IGS program is Kennedy Middle School, not McKinley Middle School. There is no help for transportation to that school that is a safer location for him. I called the transportation office to ask if I met the bus somewhere that was going to the school, could my son ride the bus to school? And was told no, because he is a transfer student. If he was going to be going to Kennedy Middle School, APS transportation office would transport him there, but that location is not a safe location for him, especially being that APS has a quote, quote, one-on-one for him, but this person is not directly by Ryder's side all day long, which means if Ryder wanted to elope, he could be in more harm's way. While I come to you guys this evening with a list of problems, I also come with solutions for these. Offer our special education teachers who are underappreciated and underutilized to work during the summer when special education students fall the farthest behind. Take a poll, see which teachers would want to work. Meet the parents halfway. We already juggle.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, ma'am. Hold on. You've gone over your 2 minutes. If you can wrap it up in a quick one sentence, thank you.
I can't speak for everybody, obviously, but I just want to make sure that you guys are knowing that these things are happening. My child falls the farthest behind during the summer, and I just want him to become successful like every other APS student. He deserves that.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Our next speaker is Dr. Sinello, followed by Renee Pacheco. You made it.
Yeah.
You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Good to be back. So good evening, Madam President and members of the school board. I am an alternative health doctor and minister. In God we trust. Tomorrow is National Day of Prayer at the Civic Plaza from 4 to 7:30 p.m. So there's a lot of fun activities with the kids starting at 4 and food trucks. And I just want to tell you about the history behind National Day of Prayer. The National Day of Prayer was created in 1952 by a joint resolution of Congress and signed into law by President Harry S. Truman. In 1988, the law was unanimously amended by both the House and the Senate and signed into law by President Ronald Reagan on Thursday, May 5th, 1988, designating the first Thursday of May as a day of national prayer. Every president since 1952 has signed a National Day of Prayer proclamation. So we the people, we are commanded in the Holy Scripture to pray for you guys. Pray for those in authority for wisdom, discernment, and repentance. In 2 Chronicles 7:14, it says, "My people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. Then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and heal the land." And so we're in a critical moment of, how the things are crazy around us, all around us. And we need a lot of prayer, and I know especially for you guys. And so we just want to, on behalf of my brothers and sisters, perhaps in this room, we want to pray for you guys for strength, and again, wisdom and discernment. And I know you have a lot on your plate. And so with that said, I just want to, may God bless you and your family, and you guys here and the school board members. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Renee Pacheco, followed by Mary Herrera.
In Texas, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that they can require the Ten Commandments to be displayed in public classrooms. It does not trample families' rights to choose religious instruction for their children because it is only displayed, not taught, to adopt nor pressured to practice them. Displaying the Ten Commandments on school walls is not the same as establishing a religion. 1647 to 1980, the Ten Commandments was displayed in classrooms because it was a foundation of America's morality. They allowed us to be free. Bringing back morale to school lessens violence. Bringing back discipline shows love for the students. Not only did Texas bring back the Ten Commandments, Louisiana and Alabama as well. To quote Dennis Prager, "In 3,000 years, no one has ever come up with a better system than the God-based Ten Commandments for making a better world, and no one ever will." The one God is the source of ethics, morality, an objective code of right and wrong. Does not emanate from human opinion. It emanates from God. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mary Herrera, followed by Jonathan Fuentes.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, and superintendent. Thank you first for the opportunity to speak this evening. I have a question to ask. And my question is, what is the follow-up with our public forum comments, our input? Is there any follow-through? Do our concerns go documented or registered? Any follow-up done? And how do we find out if any change is warranted? And if, this is a question that I ask myself, am I being efficient in presenting the concerns that I have and the concerns that I hear? Am I being efficient? And if I'm not, then what do I do? And how can my concerns be taken into consideration to make any kind of change or any kind of impact or not? And to have you all say that right now can be put on the back burner, but our priorities are these. And that's what I need to hear. So if there's any way to get any kind of feedback on what kind of follow-up or follow-through is done with the concerns that we have. And again, thank you for having us be able to be here.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jonathan Fuentes. I'm sure you have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Good evening, APS members of the board, President Tome Juarito, and Dr. Gonzalez. My name is Jonathan Fuentes, PE teacher at Colette Park Elementary. I'm here tonight to advocate for the continued growth of support of physical education in our schools. Physical education is far more than time students spend in gym during our class. PE teachers support schools in many different ways: recess activities, morning fitness programs, lunch leagues, after-school opportunities, wellness initiatives, school events, and building positive relationships with students throughout the day. At a time when students are facing increasing challenges with physical health, mental health, screen time, and social connection, I believe schools need more opportunities for movement, engagement, and relationship building, not fewer. Because PE is not just games in a gym. It is movement, it is confidence, it is teamwork, it is leadership. For some students, PE is where they finally feel successful. It is where they learn how to communicate, encourage others, handle challenges, and work together. And those lessons do not stop when class ends. Our district has emphasized that education should ensure students develop the skills and habits and mindsets essential for success. Physical education helps build those qualities every single day through teamwork, leadership, accountability, perseverance, and healthy habits, both inside and outside of the classroom. As physical educators, our goal is to protect the involvement we have in our students' lives and the meaningful relationships that we build with them every single day. When PE positions are reduced, schools also lose the opportunities for students to stay active, connected, and engaged throughout the school day. And realistically, many educators cannot sustain a half-time salary alone, which may force them to seek additional employment elsewhere. When that happens, their time, energy, and attention becomes divided between multiple jobs, fully invested into one school, community, and its students. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And our last speaker is on Zoom, Lauren Mittlejohn. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, APS staff. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this evening. Initially, when I signed up for public comment, it was because I really wanted to talk about school safety and security, having attended the recent listening session that APS hosted. And it was surprising to me how little APS actually listened at the listening session. It felt like we were invited to come to a session to listen to APS, talk to families about school safety and security instead of asking families what they needed and what they felt are required and necessary to make our schools feel safer and more secure. And interestingly, as I've been listening to all this other public comment, I realized that a lot of the things that people are commenting on are actually very much along the same theme, even if the topics are slightly different. And I challenge you all to string together the public comment that we heard tonight and the public comment that we've been hearing from teachers around what we do as a school community to promote and enhance safety and security, and what are the root causes that drive students to misbehave in ways that make their teachers feel unsafe in the classroom. PE seems to me like a pretty obvious low-hanging fruit of something that you would provide to students to allow them a safe space to play together, work, problem solve, use their body physically, examine the limits of teamwork and how you can work together. And to me, it seems very contraindicated that we're talking about progress monitoring this evening, and goals 4.2 and goal 4.2 in the progress monitoring, there was a decline. And let me just refer to my paper here, in both self-regulation, social awareness, perseverance, and self-efficacy. And to me, this all seems like part and parcel of the same issue. And what I would like to know is why we're cutting PE out of classrooms when students are clearly not getting what they need in the classroom in order to succeed in the goals that the district is setting for itself. Thank you for your time. And I look forward to an improvement in progress monitoring.
Thank you. President Tomorito, that completes public forum.
Thank you. We'll go ahead now and move on to item 6, student outcome focused governance. Discussion on progress monitoring reports for interim goal 4.2, grades 6 through 12. We'll go ahead and call up our presenters, Dr. Gonzalez, as our substitute superintendent. Dr. Randy Mallerwine, Deputy Superintendent, Leadership and Learning, Sherry Jett, Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Kenneth Salazar, Associate Superintendent, and Thomas C. West, Executive Director, Office of Accountability and Reporting. You have the floor, Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. Tonight, we are monitoring Goal 4.2, focused on skills, habits, and mindsets in grades 6 through 12. This is about whether our students are developing the perseverance, self-regulation, self-efficacy, and social awareness they need to be successful, not just in school, but in life. As you saw in the report, we are off track on this goal. The report outlines what students are telling us, the root causes behind these trends, and the steps we are taking to strengthening supports. What we are hearing is that the students need more explicit support for navigating school, stronger access to counseling and mental health resources, and clearer evidence that their voices lead to real change. In response, we are strengthening a culture of care across schools, expanding counseling access, supporting smoother transitions into high school, and building more intentional structures to listen to and act on student feedback. At this time, Madam President, our team stands ready to take your questions.
Okay, who would like to begin? Rebecca? Board Member Betson?
So, yeah, we are at a point in the year where we're going to be looking at budget. People are looking at budget left and right. And from what I'm already hearing, you know, we're off track. And I'm wondering, how will potential budget cuts impact our ability to scale the following critical interventions intended to reverse this downward trend? I mean, all of these things that our kids need, the support in schools, it's not the support up here at City Center, it's support in schools, it's in classrooms, it's counselors, it's social workers, it's those things that are going to help, you know, improve our kids' self-efficacy, perseverance, sorry. So, you know, how do we, the budget that is being put in front of us, how do we think this potential budget cuts are going to impact our ability to give the things that the kids need to see that this trend goes the opposite way?
Deputy Superintendent Dr. Gonzalez, Madam President, members of the board. I would say that budget cuts, so one of the strategies that we have here is about counselors. So counselors have not been cut at the district and at schools, but we do have vacancies there. So that is, we have a strategy for long-term and short-term for that. Long-term is building a residency program for our counselors with collaboration of Albuquerque Teacher Federation and University of New Mexico. The goal there is to build our counselor pipeline and give opportunities for us to build a deeper pool of candidates to be able to get into our schools. So that's long-term. Short-term is our counseling department has really looked at how do we ensure counseling services are for every single student. And by doing that is by offering differentials or payments for other schools to cover at another time. So, which also pulls from another school. So we especially with skills, habits, and mindsets, that's a big priority, is making sure that we have counselors at every single school to build those relationships that are key. We also have other positions at schools that we fund with our priority performance framework with student success systems and community school impact coordinators and teaching and learning coaches. Those individuals as well work with schools to develop the systems and processes needed for pedagogy, really looking at early warning indicators, as well as involving the community and building community school councils to develop strategic partnerships. I believe that when schools look at their other operational fundings, we have to look at enrollment. And so with the decline in enrollment, that really helps, or that is what really how we operationalize the schools. So we really have to look at how do we encourage and look at our schools and market our schools to our communities for Albuquerque Public Schools.
And Madam President, Member Betson, if I may, one of the things that's important to keep in mind, in addition to what Dr. Salazar shared in regards to the strategy and the staffing therein, is that we are bound by our negotiated agreements to maintain the compliance and the student to teacher ratio that does exist within our service to our students, as well as ensuring that every one of our schools, whether it be elementary, middle, or high school, does have a portfolio of options when it comes to elective classes and opportunities, and really working to ensure that we are monitoring very closely our wraparound services, be it our counseling, our social work, to ensure that it is comprehensive and our students are being able to be supported along those lines. So I just wanted to point that out in regards to our obligation to meet the language in the negotiated agreement.
I guess my comment would be that, I mean, I've been out of the schools since 2022, but when I was in the schools, counselors did not counsel. They did schedule changes. They, covered classes, but they weren't actually able to do counseling to kids who needed counseling. And I think that, that needs to be looked at, because we do have a lot of kids who are really needy and are needing somebody to talk to and counseling services. And maybe hire somebody who can do scheduling, but then allow the counselors to do counseling. And that also might attract counselors to want to be in that position, because it takes a very special person to be a counselor, to listen to people's problems all the time. It takes a special person. So, they get put in this position and they're doing scheduling, and that's not what they went to school for. So something to think about.
Deputy Superintendent, Madam President, members of the board, that is exactly what our counseling approach is comprehensive counseling, exactly what you said. There are components that every single counselor is required to submit for documentation. We recently had our end of the year celebration with counseling, and to see the data, and I'd love to share that with you all, to see the data of what our counselors have done in the aspects of attendance, coursework, behavior, working with our Closing the Gap opportunities through the ASCA model. you're hitting exactly what we're trying to do with counseling is look at it at an 80%, 20%, where 80% of the time they are with kids. And then the 20% of the time is where they're doing their documentation and paperwork.
Thank you.
Hey, anybody next? Go ahead. Member Benzie. Bowman?
Oh, okay. I wanted to bring this up during the budget conversation, but I'm very concerned that we are cutting positions like PE, like library, like counseling, and sometimes schools are having to use discretionary funds to cover that. But, you know, in terms of 4.2, I did not expect the public comment people to come out and talk about this. But if we're talking about perseverance, self-regulation, self-efficacy, and social awareness, there's no question that physical education is like a core value, and it really helps kids succeed in all of that. So, I mean, we're using this kind of computer measurement of, you know, enhancing perseverance, self-regulation, self-efficacy. But if we're really going to pursue goal 4.2, I think that I've said this before in other meetings, we've got to give the students opportunities to develop these skills. And to me, that physical education is really critical for that. I remember Miss Burse in my high school in northern New Mexico. She was also my track and cross country coach, and I definitely did perseverance. I got self-regulation, I got self-efficacy, I got social awareness. We've heard from some of our teachers that the kids are learning teamwork. And so I just want to emphasize that to me, investing in those positions is an important part of pursuing 4.2. And I understand that you guys who are the staff, it's not your fault and you're not in charge of this. I'm just saying for the record, to me, there is a strong correlation between skills, habits, and mindsets and learning, as we've heard, and physical activity. And I really wanted to bring this up in budget. I'll bring it up again. But yeah, we want to measure, but we also want to find ways to help students develop these skills. You know, running 3 miles teaches you perseverance. Winning in basketball, like President Tomarito did, teaches you self-efficacy. Getting boys, I've got 2 crazy boys in high school, get them out, exercising, teaching them self-regulation. So I'm just stating for the record that this is a priority for me. And if and that's something I feel like the district really needs to invest in it. That's all, Madam.
Board Member Jackson.
Thank you. All right, thank you. So I am looking at the data on page 3 and just kind of looking at the trend, right? And it seems like starting in fall of 2023 and leading up to fall of 2025, we had a nice slope going up, right? I think I've talked about this before. I always want to see the slope going up. We have a decrease in the slope, okay? I think that what that decrease in the slope, you guys did a really good job of analyzing the root cause, looking deeply at it. So I think my question is, of course, twofold, but more general. It's obvious that we're off track. We can see it from the data. We also know that student outcomes are not going to change until adult behaviors change. So my first question is, what adult behaviors are you all looking at to ensure that these outcomes will change? And second, what are you doing to ensure that student voice is elevated throughout these discussions, throughout these changes to ensure that self-efficacy, perseverance, self-regulation, social awareness are all increased?
Madam President, members of the board, and Deputy Superintendent Gonzalez, thank you so much for the question. I would like to answer the first part and then defer to Dr. Salazar to talk about the second part around student voice. But one thing and thank you for the compliment around our root cause analysis. The root cause analysis really is where we look at how we impact the practices that are happening at the schools. And also when Dr. Gonzalez addresses student voice, you'll hear more of how we learn what the impacts of adult practices in the schools have. But as you read through that, you really are seeing what it is that we need our adults to help our students with. And so our next level of work is to begin to address the systems that will help this to happen. And we do have things that we're putting in place. For example, we saw in our middle schools when we did the program Web Where Everyone Belongs, we see an increased sense of belonging. And even though we may see some decline in the perceptions across other skills, habits, and mindsets, we do believe that that will have long-term effects as we continue to push that system through. And so continuing initiatives like that, where we are rethinking how we develop relationships with our students, is really part of the long-term strategy.
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Gonzalez. So when we got the data, the first thing that came to my mind is this is going the wrong way, and it was unusual. So the first thing that I did, and the principals behind me could probably validate this, was I chatted every single middle school and high school principal to send me an invite for their principal advisory council, because I wanted to hear from the kids what's going on. We also did 2 root causes. The first root cause was with our academic cabinet team and our Panorama vendor, because I wanted to see if there was anything we missed in the data on their end. And that looked at it at a holistically approach. We then did another root cause with a different activity using Mr. West's the APS protocol. And we did that in academic cabinet as well with the student demographics to really identify what truly are the root causes, because when we looked at the data, it's going in a direction that we haven't gone in a while, and we're back at baseline pretty much in some of the cases. So it was something that was we wanted to make sure we really knew exactly what was going on. To give you context of themes from the Principal Advisory Council tour, is what I'm calling it, with the middle schools and high schools, we asked the kids the same questions, middle school and high school, the same questions. And it was either myself or one of my team members if I was unable to make it to those scheduled times. And the first theme that came up across was relationship belonging drives student engagement. And the students said that positive relationships with their peers, with teachers, coaches, sponsors, administrators, was the strongest factor whether they feel like they belong at school. And a lot of them were talking about the, if it wasn't without, like, for example, one student said, without activities, I don't know anyone who wouldn't feel like they like school at all. And so like there was some of this tour that really helped us identify that students emphasize that adults really want them to ask about their lives, to greet them, listen without judgment, creating welcome environments, and support them academically. A second major theme was really academic stress and workload for students in the secondary realm. A lot of them felt that a lot of the teachers, there's, especially in the spring, it's starting to amplify. We're getting close to AP tests, we're getting close to end of year finals. And so a lot of the students were saying that there's a lot going on and that they feel overwhelmed with their workload and their assignments. But the biggest one that I wanted to share, which addresses both your questions, and it's also a strategy, is students want to be able to feel relevant and interactive in their involvement in schools. A lot of the students said, if I'm taking the survey and nothing's happening, what's going on? And so to address the adult behavior change, one of the strategies that we have going into next year with our principal advisory councils is to figure out how we can work with our schools to show visible change. Visible change. That's what students are asking for. They're asking for, we don't just want you to give us your voice. We want you to do something with the voice. And a lot of the theme was mentioned in that, and as well in our qualitative open responses in the Panorama survey. And so that is the adult behavior change that we're looking at to ensure how do we visibly show students that we are making change based on their voice. And I'll give you an example of when we initially started principal advisory councils. We were at a school and the students basically said, and this was a middle school, the student said in the principal advisory council, you know, it'd be really nice to have a net in the basketball court. Like right now, there's no net. And the principal listened to that, put a net, and changed the dynamic of the principal advisory council because they saw visible changes, simple as putting a basketball net on the basketball court. And that enabled them to get a little bit more deeper into what they're looking for. Those are the simple, visible actions that we're trying to figure out with adult change. And that's how we look to the second answer is how do we elevate student voice? It's not just gathering input through the surveys, through principal advisory councils, through whatever entities that we have when we talk with kids. But what are we doing with that data, with that information to show visible change, to show that they matter? And that's what that strategy is in the progress monitoring document.
Madam President, may I follow up? Thank you. Okay, so a couple of questions that kind of came while you were speaking. So when you say that you want to elevate the voice that we're seeing in the data, does that mean something as simple as what you just said of, gosh, it'd be nice to have a net in the basketball? Or are the students asking specifically, we are taking this survey, we want to see that our social awareness is increasing? Like, is it twofold? Is it the small things and the big things? What student voice are they asking for? What do you want to recognize? And what does that look like?
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Gonzalez, I think it's a both and, because what we're seeing is that as the more students build trust in these principal advisory councils, the more deep in the discussion and they feel that they could share with their voice. So it could start off with simple technical solutions with like as simple as putting a net in a basketball court. I was at a high school during one of the tours and I asked them about their screen time, you know, because they were talking about their cell phones and how sometimes it's a distraction. And they said, well, there are some teachers that will put our cell phones in the little cases. And during class time, we actually don't even remember we have cell phones. And so the principal was like, thinking about like, could that be something that we want to talk with our staff to see about cell phones going and having kids have cell phones on their schools? I asked them, so should we do a cell phone ban? They're like, no cell phone ban. But they said, but it would be nice because it is very distracting. And that was just a simple example at one of the high schools. But those are those discussions to really show visible change that we're actually listening to them and then having discussions, then showing like, this is what we did based on your feedback to show that we are actually authentically listening to them rather than just saying that we're listening and checking a box.
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Gonzalez, I'd just like to add a little to what Dr. Salazar, because I think there's another connective component that we're working on as a strategy and an environmental shift, and we're working in conjunction with our teachers. Dr. Salazar talked about one of the more meaningful pieces of feedback that he received when he was talking to students was they want to feel that their learning is relevant, it's interactive, and it's engaging. It's really interesting because when we met with our teacher advisory group a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, the teachers were saying their greatest, their most positive and most fulfilling lessons were when they built lessons of more real world relevance, hands-on learning, and more engaging with the kids. And I think there's some connective tissue there because Chief Jett is work collaboratively with our Albuquerque Teacher Federation to create a joint memo as we are moving into an instructional framework shift that lives into these exact type of instructional shifts in the classroom where it's hands-on learning, it's project-based, it's more group collaboration and real-world relevance. The other thing is I'd like to connect is that's part of two of our big initiatives in with our strategic staffing and our freshman teams, which will lead into our academies of Albuquerque. So I think there's a lot of things that we are putting in place that we're hearing not only student voice, but we're hearing teacher voice, because if we get the environments right for both of those, we're going to see our improvement here in 4.2. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I have one more, but I'll wait. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, and thank you all for being here this evening and for the presentation. And it's always disheartening to see that we're off track, but it's small percentages, so it's not so bad. But I have a comment first, and I should probably save this to the end because I think it's kind of funny. But on page 10 of the presentation for self-regulation, the first bullet says, this is one of the survey questions, the item, how often were you polite to adults? It had the largest decrease, dropping 5 percentage points from last spring from 85% to 80%. So I'm very impressed with the honesty of the students. I don't know that I would have done that. And I was just curious if you had some insight as to why they would have answered in that manner, truthfully, and why are they being less polite to teachers and adults?
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Gonzalez. That was, so in a couple of the schools, and this was mostly middle schools, the kids were saying that it's mostly the students that are disrupted so in the spring, because I asked them, why is there a difference in the fall and the spring? And the students said, well, the students know what buttons to push in the spring because they know the teachers. And so they also know their peers. And so they're trying to get validated by their peers. There was some other middle schools where they're saying that often it's maybe 1 or 2 kiddos that will try to rile up the class and try to get the teacher off target. But a lot of it was saying is because they built the relationships and they know each other in the spring, they're able to test the limits a little bit more. And so that's something that when we look at what we're doing with culture of care and the training is how do we continue the rules and routines for discipline, even as we continue to get towards in the spring. So that's something we are going to look into is how do we keep the momentum of the fall, beginning of the school year, those routines and procedures, and revisit possibly them when they come back in the second semester.
Okay, I'm looking forward to getting that information. I do appreciate the honesty though, kids, so keep it coming. Okay, and so I'm still in self-regulation, and this is actually from page 4 of the presentation, and it's talking about the root cause of the decrease, and it said a key prioritized root cause is that traditional school practices and systems are not effectively supporting all student groups, particularly those who do not know the existing structures of school and are not familiar with the unwritten rules and norms of the school. Can you please clarify what you mean by existing structures of school and unwritten rules and norms of schools?
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Dr. Gonzalez. So when we talk about self-regulation, that is mostly connected to executive functioning skills. That is being able to be organized. Are you able to organize a binder? Is your backpack organized? And if we look at middle school backpacks and maybe even some high school backpacks, we can see if they're organized. A lot of the times we assume that because they're in 6th grade, they already know how to organize a backpack. They know how to talk and advocate for themselves with their teachers. Those are all assumptions. That's why we're really looking at Web and Link Crew, because Link Crew in 9th grade is teaching executive functioning skills. It's almost like the hidden curriculum of school, how to go, where to talk to a counselor, how to talk with your teacher if you're afraid to talk in front of your peers. That was also one of the things I heard in the PAC tour, is they're afraid to ask questions in front of their peers.
Right.
And then they're also afraid to ask teachers by themselves. And I said, well, how about send them an email? And they're like, no, I don't know. So that those are those executive functioning skills that we assume that because they're now in sixth grade, they're still, their brains are still developing. And those are those explicit skills that we need to teach for self-regulation and executive functioning skills that we are utilizing in web, where everyone belongs, and Link Crew starting in high school next year.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Maybe Janelle. Oh, Janelle. Are you there?
I'm here. Thank you, President Tomorito. Yes, I do have a few questions. I'll start by saying that I really do love the honesty of the presentation and the root causes, and also, ditto about student voice. This is what I love to hear, and I think that some of the strategies that we're putting in place are some of the things that I've been asking for as a young person for a very long time, right? For the district to listen to us, because the students have the solutions of what they need in order to succeed. So I'm super excited that that's reflective of the presentation. And I also want to acknowledge that we constantly see a dip in the spring. So that's something that was familiar to me. I'm hoping that that changes in the future. I think we all are, but I did want to acknowledge that students are saying across the board, spring is just really hard, because not only are we fatigued, we have a lot of work, but it's also testing windows. People are getting ready to graduate. It's just something that students have been very honest about, that spring is a lot on them. So I wanted to just acknowledge that. And my first question goes in line with that student voice. So I'm on page 8. And my question is, by spring of 2027, so a year from now, what percentage of schools will implement a "you said, we did" feedback loop, and how will student awareness of these actions be measured? And connected to that, is there a way the district will document how the student-generated recommendations resulted in action?
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Gonzalez. So right now, with the big part of principal advisory councils is one of the superintendent's guardrails, which is guardrail 4.3, which is principal advisory councils. The part of that guardrail is to ensure that every single school has a principal advisory council. With that, we provide resources and questions for our principals to help facilitate those if they choose to use those. A lot of the times that in order for us to help and see what's happening in the district, we have our principals and or one of their members send us back a summary of those meetings, so we can see at a district level what is occurring in there. That is another entity of data that we use to really look and reflect on the strategies that we may need to adjust or consider. When we think about next year and this strategy that we have for secondaries, that particular resource will be more specific to what visible action have you taken this month based on what you're meeting with your principal advisory council. So it's now helping figuring out, we listened to the students and we had a discussion, but now what are we doing as a visible action, which could also include students as well. An example that I can share is with one principal advisory council, they were going to do something about anti-bullying. And so the students themselves took it upon them to reach out to our equity team to really think about bullying and what that looks like. And they were developing an anti-bullying market for their school in the principal advisory council. That's a visible change that students were doing based on what they're hearing from their peers. Those are those kinds of examples that we're wanting to see at a monthly rate to kind of ensure that we are responding to student voice. And that's what that resource will look like with principal advisory councils for next year.
Thank you so much. And just to follow that, so the "you said, we did" kind of campaign that's proposed can be chosen as a resource. So not every school will have that. Only the principal advisory councils will choose to use that.
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Gonzalez. So we, working with our assistant superintendents, we will have to meet our guardrail for next year. And I believe it is 100% next year guardrail rate for guardrail 4.3. So we will have to work with our principal supervisors to ensure there is a principal advisory council in every single school in order to meet our guardrail goal for next year, which is 100%. And so, so that way we would have that resource available for all schools.
Perfect. And then you talked a little bit about how the meeting notes get sent to the district. Is there a way that potential students could have access to the document that you all end up creating out of the You Said We Did, so that if a school that might have an idea, or students might have an idea at one school, can look at these notes and see if something similar happened at another school, so that there's that collaboration?
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Gonzalez. I love the idea because that is what was said in our district school health advisory council, was really figuring out how we can collaborate, not just necessarily with principal advisory councils, but having schools collaborate with each other on certain topics. And whether that would be utilizing the current structure, which every school will have, which is the principal advisory council, could we align times where a couple high schools students meet together virtually via the principal advisory council, working on a common theme or a common project that they're doing? So those are things that we're considering as far as making sure that students are aware of what is happening and are able to identify what's happening not only at their school, but at other schools as well, to gather some ideas and collaborate.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that is exactly where my head was going, is how can we ensure that that action is being documented, so that if students are not in the advisory council, or they're not somebody who is very involved in their school, they still have access to say, okay, our voices are being heard, this action is happening. Or even some students who graduated already, right? And they want to check up on their school and say, oh, look at the amazing stuff that our students and our principals and our staff are doing. I think that would be a really good resource for all of our students to have. So thank you so much for thinking of all of those things. I do have a few more questions, President Tomorito, but I'll wait for the second round.
Okay. You're good. Two more.
Thank you. Given the culture of care training is intended to align instructional practices with district priorities around equity and belonging and create inclusive environments, how is the administration specifically addressing racism within this framework to ensure that students from all racial backgrounds feel they are being genuinely cared for and listened to as individuals? This is a reference of students calling for more inclusive and culturally responsive environments that recognize their diverse needs.
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Gonzalez. So I'm going to do two-part answer for that question. The first part is the vendor that we utilize for culture of care training is, that was actually one of the reasons why we selected them, is because there is anti-racism aspects of the training embedded. In addition to that, the cohort schools will have opportunities to send their staff not only to get the culture of care training, which is like our level 1, which is mindset. They also will have an opportunity to meet with, actually, I think they already had their trainings with our another aspect of Dr. Holly, which is culturally relevant training, in addition to ARTI, which is Chief Campos. ARTI stands for anti-racism. There's another anti-racism training. So those are aspects that are embedded in culture of care, and that's one of the reasons why we selected that vendor, is because we wanted to ensure all aspects of equity are embedded into culture of care. The second thing that I'll say is about inclusive environments and professional development. When a bright spot that did occur when we did do the root cause was we saw the special education gap decrease from students with IEPs and students that do not have IEPs. That gap is pretty much gone. And so if you saw the supplemental data that was in that particular strategy, we met with our special education department to gather their insights as to why they would see, and it was in elementary and in secondary. So it was third through 12, where we saw the gaps decrease. And they attributed it to their specialized inclusive practices trainings that they provide to schools. And what makes those trainings so unique is it's specifically tailored to each site. That the special education team goes in and does a need assessments with the schools and meets with and works with the school to ensure that the training hits as many people as possible. That is a model that we have identified and want to explore and expand for next year, not only just with special education students, but in all of our PD trainings. How can we make it more specific to the schools so it's not a cookie cutter professional development, that it hits the needs of the staff and the students that are specifically in that community? That is one of the bright spots that we did find in the data using our root cause analysis.
Thank you. And one more. Could the leadership provide data for when the board, could leadership provide a date for when the board will receive disaggregated performance data regarding our target efforts for Martinez-Yazzie students and African-American students, and also the counselor data that you just said you would offer up? I would love a date when we can get this data, because I feel like there's been a few times that we've been told we're going to be given this data, and then I don't know, maybe it goes on to something and I just never get it in front of me. So I would love to have that data emailed to me, maybe.
Deputy Superintendent Gonzalez, for President, Member Betson. So the disaggregated data is available on our APS website, on our APS dashboard. It's there. We actually also added a tab to make it even more visible. So the SAPR team has a tab now that you can actually click on top of it that says results by student group. So it should be very clear there, but I'll also make sure that we send it to you.
I would love that. I know all of us have, well, I shouldn't say all of us. I'm assuming most of us have full-time jobs, and I don't want to go looking on the APS website for it. I just want it in my email if I could have it, please. And thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Gonzalez, I can have that counseling data for you ready. I already was anticipating and hoping to get that for you before the meeting, so I can actually have that to you by the end of the week.
Great. That is awesome. Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Okay. This is really far out there, but I'm just curious what follow-up is done for the comments that are made that should be raising red flags. And so there's one here under mental health support is urgently needed. And it says, and this is coming from a student, I don't know, my mental health is failing. I'm hurting, getting cyberbullied, and there are many signs people judge me just by the face reactions and how they act around me. I don't want to go to school anymore. I want real friends. I want to be better, to be myself. I can't be myself without feeling like others are going to judge me straight away. And I can't stop overthinking about stuff that shouldn't matter, that shouldn't be something to overthink about. I'm draining very slowly. People won't understand that I'm trying my hardest, my best to keep on living. I know that this is all part of God's plan, but I don't want to cry myself to sleep praying for God to end it. Please tell me you're reaching out to these students. That's heartbreaking.
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Gonzalez, yes, those are all flagged and reached out, and that particular, so we are able to identify on our back end. So working with our strategic analysis resource department team, our SAPR team, each one of these, we are able to identify the open responses by student, by school. And so we reach out, all flagged, and with those particular ones, we make sure that the principal is copied and our counseling resource team is copied as well with those particular incidences.
Okay, my turn. My question is from, just as you were stating with the IEPs and the professional development on page 8. I know as we expand the site-based inclusive practices and professional development to increase opportunities for students with IEPs, how are we defining those practices consistently across schools, and what systems ensure they remain aligned with IDA requirements, including least restrictive environment and self-delivery compliance. You know, I'm big on compliance, and I am really concerned when we talk a lot about inclusive and how we're handling that. So if you could share a little bit about that for me, I would appreciate it.
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Gonzalez, thank you for the question. We are looking really thoughtfully, as mentioned, at our inclusive practices work because we do see some changes in our school culture and what's happening in our classrooms. That being said, the professional development that team does is based in the best practices of serving all students, but especially our special education students. I want to note we do promote inclusive practices because we do believe that a strong sense of belonging and those relationships with peers and adults are really critical, as well as our commitment to making sure all students have access to layer one content. So our standards-based instruction or high quality instructional materials. The IEP is what drives where the student receives those services. So the first level is to ensure standards-based instruction, access to high quality instructional materials. Our preference is to provide the support in the general ed classroom so the students with their peers. But I can't emphasize enough how much we work on increasing and improving our IEP work so that we truly are making the right placement for those students in alignment with least restrictive environment and also the student needs.
Thank you. Because I do have a big concern, especially with middle school students, on how we're handling, you know, least restrictive environments, and then we're looking also at inclusive practices. I don't want those kids to get lost, especially with middle school. And just as board member Benavides, middle schools are where relationships are very important. And I do have a big concern also with the cutting of PE. How are we going to make sure that kids not only have that relationship building, but I really think it's a responsibility of every adult. I think sometimes we sort of say the counselors, we tend to give that to them instead of realizing that it's everyone. I did numerous mentoring in middle school, and it was one-on-one with students, and just taking that little bit of time to know that they're important and they're valued and they're heard, and just helping a principal understand there's another way to see this child instead of just a problem. That if we just turn around our words and really thinking about what we say, we can include these kids in schools. And I think, you know, yes, it's a goal, but I often think that it's just part of our human nature, that we have to get back to relationships and somehow figure out, not with only the amount of screen time we have and the lack of relying on other things to build those relationships, that we have to find the responsibility, just as the adults that surround these kids. I don't think they have to ask us. I think we should be able to see when these kids need us to reach out, because it's very apparent. And I know raising my children in middle school, and oftentimes my son would come to me and tell me, Mom, Shandine wants you to do this. She's afraid to come to you. But my son was very key in telling me so many things and what was going on in their little group dynamics of brother and sister. But if I didn't hear them, I don't know what they would do. Well, they did do things to make sure I would listen to them. And one of the things my son would do is when I would pick him up from school, we would go into the garage, and then he would say, Mom, just sit here. Let the garage door go down. And I said, okay, but turn off the car. So I turned it off, and then we're sitting in the dark. He says, okay, Mom, we haven't had time to talk. So I have to stop you for a moment, sit in the dark, and let's talk. Now, I don't know what that darkness looks like for all of us in the school or in our homes, but we have to start taking the time. Because to hear that little girl says no one is listening to her and no one can hear her cry. That's how sad this is. The children are crying and we can't hear them. What is wrong with that? I don't know what to say, but I just know we got to do things better. Because this is middle school, and if we are declining, we have to look at things differently because the system in itself is not working. And we're doing things, drastically cutting things that are so important to these kids because it's their connection. So somehow we got to figure it differently. So that's my response to this, and I don't know if anybody else has a question.
Madam President,
Yes.
if I may, in relationship to our physical education teachers, I would like to share that at the elementary, for example, every one of our elementaries has, moving into next year, physical education, art, music, and library. So that is a constant that is in their portfolio every single elementary school. We do have 40 schools that are under 300 students in terms of their enrollment projected for next school year. So based on that and the allocation formula, what we have is we have under schools that are elementary schools that are at 300 or lower, they will have a half-time teacher in those 4 areas that I indicated. So it is enrollment based in regards to how we fund these positions. So there is, I think, a distinction, as hard as it is to hear that between the decline in enrollment and a cut. There are 6 PE positions that were lost through the enrollment piece. But I just want to emphasize that every one of our elementary schools next year will have a PE, art, music, and library. But based on their enrollment, will dictate whether it is a half-time FTE in those areas or a full-time FTE in those areas.
Well, and just looking at the students' responses within, the data that you've given us, to me, it tells me that either they're not being heard, that they keep repeating over and over to other adults that they need help, and but they're not being heard. So I don't know what we're going to do in place of those cuts. We have to also make sure, 1, we are telling the students what we're doing. 2, the community needs to know what we're doing. Because right now, they're not hearing that. And I think we need to be a little more proactive, especially as we begin this new school year and how we're laying this out. Because I hate seeing those children responses. And just as the lady who came up and mentioned, what are we doing? They want to hear feedback. So that's why we have to be a little more responsive, because especially when we're seeing these kids tell us things. We need to have those next steps. And I hope that next year we have a little more communication going on with our community, but most importantly, with our students. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a couple, President Tomorito.
Go ahead. You're
Thank
the
you.
old lady right now, and that means you're Wonder Woman. So go ahead and ask your questions.
I just wanted to say first, thank you for your words. I think that we all feel the same way. We want to make sure that our students feel heard, especially when they're in crisis, right? So thank you for that. And also thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, for giving us a real-time answer for something that was
that has been shared in public comment. So we appreciate that feedback that we can go back and tell our communities about physical education. So my question, I have two. The first one is, as the handbook is being updated, what can we expect to see around the tiered accountability system? So what does accountability look like for a student? And how long do we expect a student to be separated from a classroom?
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Gonzalez. So we actually, prior to making it live, I guess you could say, is we ran it through a couple focus groups to see where their perceptions are regarding the additions of culture of care into the student handbook. And I'll talk with working with our Albuquerque Teacher Federation, I believe it was mostly our Fed reps that were present. A lot of them like the direction where we are going as a district. However, they are waiting to ensure that more training occurs before we actually roll out an official student handbook with culture of care, as we still have a lot more schools that we need to send teams to get trained with. And so that was one of the feedback that we said is they like it. Let's continue looking at that, but let's wait till we get more schools that have started implementing it and started working it with their staff before we roll it out live as a district. And the same was said when we had a principal focus group as well to identify what that looks like. And again, we intentionally invited principals that were part of the training and principals that were not have not gone through the training. And the principals that have not gone through the training were still, they were having a lot of questions about how do I do this? How do I do circles? And so that was why we are really waiting to get a little bit more schools trained, which we do have a plan next year for culture of care, more culture of care schools to send teams. So that is something that we are looking at for next year, working with the student handbook in our district task force, culture of care district task force. That's with our ATF, our UNM, and ATS stakeholders. And that's what you're talking about is one of the questions that they had was, well, do I go through layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, or do I use traditional punishment? That is something that we are looking to finalize and get nice and cleaned up for the 26-27 school year to have the student handbook possibly sent out live with the additions of culture of care for all students 27-28.
Thank you so much. I think you had put it really great at the listening session too, and saying restorative justice practices don't mean that there is no accountability, right? It's a form of accountability. It's a form of understanding. So I'm excited that you are working with everyone to develop something that is going to work for our students and making sure that it's something that we're really thinking through. It's not just something that we're putting in the handbook to say we're doing something. Right? It's something that's intentional, and I really appreciate that. So thank you all for working on that. I'm excited to see what comes out of it. I have my last question here, which is what system level adjustments, so BAU schedules, advisory periods, things like that, will be implemented to ensure all students receive dedicated time for skill building and self-regulation?
Madam President, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Gonzalez. So we do have advisory resources that the district does provide. Again, it is based on the instructional councils to identify what resources they are utilizing for advisory. We have seen some examples of good practices with schools using what they are calling win time, which is what I need time. And so schools are being creative with their master schedules. This is more specifically with elementary and middle school to see how we can identify some win time, what I need time, and working with that. And then we have some high schools that are being a little bit creative with their advisories, with long advisories, to see how they can be a little bit more responsive to what students' needs are. One of the listening tour schools that we said that students were actually looking for some opportunities to have some time for like a study hall to get some work done because of their overloaded with stress with the amount of assignments that they had. So those are just some of the things that we're listening to. and really looking at best practices district-wide with schools' master schedules.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Board Member
Madam
Ben.
President.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Duran Blake. I wanted to make sure that I addressed the heartfelt sentiment from the board members tonight about our kids and their social and emotional well-being. And the comment is, we have to do something different. What are we doing different? And you mentioned mid-school. Mid-school, I mean, our superintendent was a mid-school principal. I was a mid-school principal. It's something that our mid-school kids are not overlooked. But one thing I wanted to share with you is the one thing that we are doing this year, we started last year and this year that is different, is our teaming model that we've talked about with the board. And that is where we are going to wrap around services. We wrap teachers around kids. It provides a small learning environment. It provides more inclusive environment. It also provides access to multiple adults at one time. Not every kid can connect with every adult. Not every adult can connect with their class of kids. Sometimes it's a roll of the dice to see if human beings can connect. But when you up the number of human beings that wrap around kids, you have a likelihood that a child can find somebody to connect. And so a child that is hurting, if you have more adults wrap around that kid at one time, somebody will see it. And so we're creating different environments so our kids don't get lost. We're creating different environments so our kids are getting the instructional model they need, but also the social emotional supports to come to school, create a sense of belonging so their brains are in a place so they're learner ready. A lot of times our kids come to school and their amygdalas are firing because they can't make sense of the executive function that Dr. Salazar said. And so before we ended tonight with the heartfelt comments of there, I wanted to make sure that the board knew we are actively working and creating better environments for our kids and for our teachers so we all can connect and create a heightened sense of belonging. So I just didn't want us to end tonight without sharing that, because I really appreciate, the emotion, because we all come from the same place. So thank you.
Board Member Ben.
One last comment, and I don't want this to come across snarky. But I've heard Courtney say a few times that, Courtney, you might have to help me with this. Students' behaviors don't change until adult. How does it go?
Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change.
Thank you. And I really want us to think about us as adults. We have chosen to spend $700,000 on a survey. What if we took that money and put it towards PE teachers, which we're hearing from all over the district, our kids need? They need PE teachers, they need to be out there. It helps with self-regulation. And yes, I am not a fan of Panorama. I know it's very, I've made it very clear, but I'm thinking, how many PE teachers, how many part-time PE teachers, 0.5 positions could we buy with 700,000? And my math, and I'm not great at math either, but I'm thinking 28 at part-time positions at 50,000. So I'm just saying that our adult behaviors, maybe this is really an opportunity for us to look at our adult behaviors and see how we could really impact our classrooms.
I have one more question. Then we'll go. Yeah. But mine is because I know right now when we look at not only students, teachers, and our staff, but I think this is a critical goal, especially when we're looking at students that lie in these places that they're calling out for help. I just want to know, how are we including parents in all of this? How are we training them to understand when their child may need help? What resources are we putting out there for parents? Because I think many times we forget that parents need to be part of this too. they're just not to be informed when their kids get into trouble. But I think many times that they need to be included on how do we set these goals? How can we also do this within the homes? Because those are learning environments too. So I don't know how that is being included, but if you could share with me what you're doing for parents, I would appreciate that.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Duran Blakey. What we have done this year is through the superintendent's advisories, so she has her multiple advisories, which we actually celebrated today. We have our Superintendent Family Advisory Council Board. And through that process, we heard that there really needs to be a more intentional focus with parent-teacher conferences. And so with that, we looked at our parent-teacher conferences models and developed guidance for schools and guidance for families that was on the APS website. The guidance for schools was sent to the schools to share with their teachers. Now, whether or not they utilize those resources is another thing that we'll have to figure out what are the strategies, and it looks different in secondary. We've heard that it does look different because there's 6 teachers instead of the 1 teacher. But one of the resources that was provided was the 1-pager from Panorama that gives a profile of a student that has their skills, habits, and mindsets, how they're doing with self-regulation, perseverance, social awareness, their attendance, their course performance, their behavior, all in one piece of paper. The outcomes that we also shared with the families are what are questions you can ask your teachers and your schools when you have your parent-teacher conferences. And that's what we shared with our Superintendent Family Advisory Board, because they want it to be more interactive rather than a sit and listen from the school. They want to be, what can I have prepared so I can have a really good conversation with the staff. So that was something that we looked at, and we are looking at our parent-teacher conferences and how do we give those resources more advanced awareness with the schools, so they're able to utilize them in the past, because that is what we see as a very low-hanging fruit is parent-teacher conferences and boosting not just the attendance in secondary, but also the involvement of the families in what they're doing during that time.
Okay. Anybody else? Board Member Bowman?
Yeah, I have thoughts, but I'll bring it up in the budget conversation.
Okay, okay.
I want us to keep moving.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for doing all you do. And yes, we were a little teary-eyed and probably a little critical. But it is something that's hard to face at times. So thank you. We'll go ahead and I'll let you guys leave the table and we'll move to our next item. Oh, we changed that. All right, we're ready to go to item number 7, our consent agenda. So we're looking, consider approval of the consent agenda.
And Board President?
Yes.
Moved at the beginning of the meeting, item 9.1. So this.
Oh, sorry. I got the old one. Which one? 0.9
and 0.1. Yeah.
That's right.
Review.
Madam President.
Okay.
School improvement transformation plans.
Yes, we
Madam
got it.
President, members of the board, Superintendent Duran Blakey. We're here to present the spring review of the school improvement and transformation plans. So we stand for your questions.
Okay. Does anybody want to have a question? Go ahead. Board Member Bowman.
Hi, I have a question about my Apache, which is a school in my district that has a transformation plan. And there's a lot of information here. It's kind of overwhelming, but Can you tell me a little bit more? I mean, I've got the report in front of me. I looked at it yesterday. But can you tell me a little bit more about how we're doing on literacy and some of the strategies? It looks like the principal, whom I understand is an excellent principal, is doing some work on school-wide reading schedule and comprehension checks. Can you just, since this is an elementary school in my district, can you just talk to me a little bit more about our literacy efforts there?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Blakey, if I'm looking in the system right now, which I understand is backdated from when these reports came out, and the school met all but one critical action in their 90-day plan, meaning that they checked everything off and they are making progress toward their goal.
Okay, and so what is, so I guess the action plan is we've got a problem and then we're gonna do a set of things to fix that. But how is Apache doing in relationship to our goal of literacy?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Blakey, the end of year assessments are happening as we speak, and so we are awaiting that data now.
Okay. All right. Do I need to do a let's talk, or could you get back to me and let me know how that's going?
Please submit a let's talk.
Okay.
Are you asking for the end of the year?
Yeah, the end of the year.
You'll be able to see all of the schools end of the year once we get that data. We send it to the full board.
Okay, great.
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
And for me, thank you.
Jackson?
Okay. I don't have any questions. Thank you for taking the time to sit and talk with us. Yes. And thank you all for all coming. And we're gonna go ahead and move on to item number 7, consent agenda. So we're looking for approval of our consent agenda.
Are we doing 9.2 updated?
Oh,
I don't think we moved that. We just moved 9.1.
Board President,
oh,
you're correct.
9.2.
Board President, you're correct. We're on 7 and then we'll do 9.2 in order.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so I need a motion and a second for our approval of our consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda items 7.1 to 7.10.
And I'll second. This is Board Member Benavides.
Board Member Jackson, motion to approve the consent agenda items, and Board Member Benavides, second. Can I vote?
Danila Stoka,
Yes.
Rebecca Betson,
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Orikia Bowman,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito.
Yes, the motion carried. Thank you. Now we'll move on to item number 8, action items. So 8.1, we're going to consider approval of the notice of sale and delegation of authority of the series 2026 A and B, general obligation school building and refunding bonds, along with the preliminary official statement relating to the district's general obligation bonds, series 2026 A and B. Presenters are Renee Apodaca, Chief Financial Officer, and Mark Turnbull, Executive Director of Accounting. Can I get a motion in a second before we proceed?
I move to approve the notice of sale and delegation of authority of the series 2026 A and B general obligation school building and refunding bonds, along with the preliminary official statement relating to the district's general obligation bonds, series 2026 A and B. This is Member Jackson.
And I second it. This is Board Member Betson.
Board Member Jackson, motion to approve. Thank you for that. I know it was a long read. The notice of sale and delegation of authority of the series 2026 A and B, general obligation school building and refund bonds, and Board Member Benson, second. Thank you.
we call for the vote? Or after the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, board members, Superintendent, Dr. Duran Blakey. This action item is to seek approval to proceed with the 2026 general obligation bond sale. This is related to the election in November 2025, and we stand for questions.
Any questions? Board Member Bowman? No? All right, no questions. So we'll call for the vote.
Janelle Astorga,
Yes.
Rebecca Betson,
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Warikia Bowman,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito.
Yes. Thank you. The motion carries. So now we'll go ahead and move along to 8.2, consider approval of the proposed Albuquerque Public Schools budget for fiscal year 2027, including charter school budgets and granting approval for board member signatures on all necessary documents. Presenters, Renette Apodaca, Chief Financial Officer, and David Vigil, Executive Director of Budget and Strategic Planning.
Madam President, members of the board, before you this evening is a proposed Albuquerque Public Schools budget for fiscal year 2027. This budget has been under development since early fall when we went to the community to hear their priorities. Over the past few months, the finance team has provided updates to you and walked through the development of this budget each month, including enrollment and revenue projections, priorities, and community input that shape the budget. The Board of Education Governance Manual states that the role of the board is to review and approve the budget only after determining that the board's goals are the priority for resource allocation. Tonight, our task is therefore twofold. One, verify that every significant dollar is aimed at moving the needle on goals 1 through 4, and 2, confirm that none of the proposed expenditures violate the guardrails. This $2.3 billion budget aligns with our board goals, guardrails, and the strategic plan, with a continued focus on directing resources to improving student outcomes. It also reflects the realities that we are navigating, including a projected operational shortfall of money that will be covered through reserves while maintaining required fund balance levels. As you know, the state has increased salaries by 1% and increased employer contributions to insurance to 80%. The administration respectfully requests your approval of the fiscal year 2027 budget. I will now turn the meeting over to Ms. Apodaca and Mr. Vigil, who will present more information about the budget.
Thank you, Superintendent Dr. Duran Blakey. Madam President, board members, as the superintendent stated, tonight we come before you for the final approval of the fiscal year 2027 budget. Beginning in February 2026, we presented budget information on food and nutrition services, APS transportation, capital funds, special education funds, state and federal funds, and operational funds. Each presentation demonstrated the budget in a strategic lens. It showed how the budget aligned to the Board of Education goals and strategic plan. Information included a logic model with detailed inputs, outputs, and outcomes, and also any initiatives or strategies that continue, increase, or decrease. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Vigil.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Duran Blakey. Want to direct your attention to slide number 7. We are presenting for your approval today a balanced budget. The $2.3 billion budget takes into consideration some legislative initiatives, basically a 1% salary increase for all school district employees, 80% insurance premiums to be paid by APS, and then a 20% cost share to the employee. And then in-house Bill 2 provides the following in the SEG funding formula for teacher mentorship, education plans, literacy, CTE, and community school framework. It includes money for instructional materials, including dual credit materials and educational technology. And then also it provides enough funding to provide an hourly minimum wage of $15. In addition, it also provides for sufficient funding for free menstrual products in schools. Some of the district highlights in looking at this year's budget, the 1% salary increase cost for district employees is estimated to cost $6.2 million. The 80% insurance premium cost for APS is estimated to cost $35 million total. $29 million of that will be paid through operational and funded through the SEG. And then, you know, the declining enrollment issue that we continue to have, we've declined by 2,560 students. That roughly estimates to $40 million when you run that through the when you run that through the SEG formula. So when we get the SEG formula, we're estimating that to be $1.019 billion. We're ending this current fiscal year, FY26, with a SEG at $1.015 billion. So what I'm saying here is that we're getting $4 million extra for next year, but we still have all of these obligations to cover. So when we're looking at the overall budget, we know that declining enrollment is causing us to have this deficit that we're facing. So when we look at how schools are funded through the enrollment, we know that we've taken steps to make sure that we're projecting the correct enrollment for each school, and that we do have a compliance process by when students actually show up. And even before they show up, there is a process by which we go ahead and make sure that schools are sufficiently staffed. If we'll turn our attention to slide number 8, this is a summary of our operational fund summary. As I mentioned, we'll have the $1.119 billion in SEG. We have another $15 million in other operational revenues. Impact aid is $0.3 billion, and the ad valorem property taxes $6.5 million. Total revenues for the budget is $1.041 billion. And then when we look at the expenditure side of the budget, we see that schools total $780 million, departments $165 million, district-wide accounts total $112 million. Total expenditures for the budget for next year is $1.057 billion. So that leaves a deficit of $16.1 million that will be covered through our fund balance for next year. So we're beginning or estimating our ending fund balance for this fiscal year to be $73.9 million. And so that will cover the expected shortfall of 16.1 so that we can present a balanced budget to you and to PED. That will leave projected ending FY27 projected fund balance of $57.8 million. And APS policy requires us to keep a reserve of 5%. And that 5% reserve requirement totals 52.9. So you can see that we're estimating to be above that level as well. Slide number 9 just has a breakdown of all of our funds that make up the $2.3 billion. Our operational funds, by and large, are the largest portion, followed by our capital funds and our debt service funds. Other funding sources that go to support our operations, school operations, are federal grants. 3.2% of the budget, food and nutrition services, which is 3.3% of the budget, and then other smaller funds after that, including state and local grants, student transportation, school activities, universal free lunch, and athletics. So I'll turn that over to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, in our staffing formula, we do have core resources. So these are resources that every school receives. And I know Deputy Dr. Gonzalez talked about this. So we do have where every school gets a principal, they get a custodian, they get a secretary, and then there's also positions that depend on enrollment. For example, PE minimum is 0.5 FTE, librarian minimum 0.5 FTE, nursing minimum 5.5 FTE, and then dependent on enrollment, that could go up. So if you go to slide 15, this is the budget resolution, and this is the approval that we are seeking. So we stand for questions.
All right. Who wants to go first? Becca? Becca, do you want to go first?
No, I won't go first. I'm thinking.
Janelle, do you want to go ahead and start us off?
Yeah, I can start us off. Thank you. So my first question is, how are resources being allocated to ensure equitable access to experienced, well-supported teachers across all schools? And beyond the 1% salary increase, what investments are being made in teacher retention, mentorship and professional development, and working conditions and class sizes?
President and Member Astorga, the majority of our funding does go directly to staff, and I think everybody can kind of see that from the graphs that we have. Beyond the compliance, we do have the teacher teaming that Dr. Mellerwine talked about earlier to look at how we start breaking down the isolation of a classroom for staff so that the teachers can work more in collaboration than in isolation. We also have a very successful program in the teacher residency program, which is another event tonight. There were like 5 events at the same time tonight. And the teacher residency program, I have to say, is probably one of the collaborations that we've had that is extremely successful to the point that we are almost at capacity in our need to hire more teachers. And I don't think in the past probably 10 years, we've been at a place to be able to say that we are at a point where we are very full of teachers. So Mr. Torgerson is even considering that we won't need a job fair this year because we don't have enough jobs open for teachers. But this is a good problem to have. It's a very good problem to have. So we continue to look at other ways of collaboration in the budget. So you'll see that last year was the full expansion of providing art and music in every school, which allows more time for teachers to collaborate at the elementary. Plus, it's a positive experience for our students to be able to have. So they have what in elementary we call specials. So they're all able to have art, music, PE, and library, and then schools usually pick one extra one that they have. So I think that there are a lot of different initiatives that are happening to really help support the staff that are in the schools and to be creative, because the biggest thing we really hear is connected to time. And we are working on the middle schools also to be able to provide them a schedule similar to the high schools that will allow them more collaboration time like the high schools have. And then our elementaries with the extra specials are able to pull out some collaboration time. But time is really the crutch of what we try to fund to be able to help where the real concern is.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Blakey, for laying all of that out for us. I feel like it's super important for us to know just because of the conversations that we've been hearing from public comment, to know that we are allocating funds for these programs to support our educators. So I really appreciate that. President Tomohito, I do have a few more questions. Do you want me to wait or can I ask them?
You can ask one more.
Okay, perfect. So my next question is, were the 5,300 community survey responses disaggregated by race, income, language, and geography? And if so, how did that shape the budget priorities?
Sorry, Board Member Astorga, you can't probably see, but Mr. West is coming forward to talk about the survey.
Okay, great, thank you.
Superintendent Duran Blakey, Madam Chairperson, and Board Member Astorga. So it is an anonymous survey, so we are not able to provide any demographics on who responded to that survey.
Okay, that's really good to know. Thank you. Were there any ways that the budget priorities were determined based on our Yazzie Martinez goals? Can you just explain that a little bit more? I'm sure there were, but can you explain that for us a little bit?
Yes, Board President and Member Astorga, I think that it's really important to note that. I appreciate the question because we really do want to make sure that in a strapped time of dollars where we're operating actually in a deficit that we needed to make up, we need to make sure that all of the dollars that we have are connected to our goals of serving our students in the Yazzie Martinez demographic. And one of the places that you'll see that is also in the discretionary money that we give to schools. And so schools get various funds based on compliance that Ms. Apodaca talked about. But then we also use a formula to give schools discretionary funds. So schools that are serving students identified in the Yazzie Martinez demographic receive more funds to be able to really target how they want to serve their students. And so one of the major ways we do that is by allocating funds that then their instructional councils are able to get together to figure out what would be the best way to spend those funds. Now, because our budget is smaller, than every year we get less funds. But we continue to use those funds as well as our title funds to allocate to schools to be able to really leverage according to their 90-day plans and their school priorities, how they can best utilize the funds.
Thank you so much. And just a quick follow-up, it actually ties into the question that I was going to ask, but I think you'll be able to answer it now. So I know that we're talking about like our Yazzie Martinez students, and we now have an increased funding in areas like student services. So can you tie into what you just said, how student services might be equitably distributed amongst our schools as it prioritizes Yazzie Martinez students?
Yes, so one of the examples, and I think it kind of connects to the conversation we had earlier around Goal 4, is how we make sure that we're staffed with counselors and nurses and redirectors. And I think sometimes we forget about the investment in the redirectors we've had as well, added to all of the elementary schools. And we actually just partnered with the teachers union to get feedback on if the redirectors are helpful, because it's a big investment that we've done to help with behavior at the elementary level. And so you'll see student services such as that. I think it's really important to point out too that as the state gives money in the SCG, it is to encompass everything, really. That when we talk about things like school safety, which we heard a lot in the survey, to provide security to schools, that bucket of money is the same bucket that pays for teachers and principals and personnel. And I think sometimes there's a misconception that security money is from a different space, as we want more support services for students, of counselors and of police and of security and of
all of these support services that are so needed in our schools, even extracurricular activities, all of these coaches, everything is paid for out of this same bucket. And so when you start thinking about that as support services outside the teacher classroom experience, it really is how you fund fully the student experience.
Lots of great information. I really appreciate all the resources that we have and making sure, even as a guardrail that we have to ensure that funding is equitable throughout the district. So thank you for your answers and thank you to the team for putting this budget together.
Thank you. And Board Member Astorga and Madam President, just real quick to Member Astorga's question. I think that's why this funding formula we use to staff schools is really important, because as our money gets strapped more, we really have to have a balance of like, where are we able to provide every school something by having the 0.5 rather than or some schools get a 1.0, but then you don't have enough to have all schools have everything. So that's an example of how the art and music was. So you switched every year because we couldn't afford to have it for everybody. So as you have it for everybody, then you have to look at some of these. We have over 40 schools that are under 300. You have to make sure that you're staffing it at a level that you're still able to staff all of the small schools and all of the larger schools. So mathematically, we try to divide up the FTEs as best as we can to make sure that everybody gets something.
And I'm sorry, you just brought a question to my head as a follow-up to that. How are our principals being aware of the funding formulas and how can they distribute that information to their staff?
Sure. The principals have what we call a budget call in the spring. I think it was in February. It was Mr. Vihil's like first day of work. We're like, oh, can you present the budget to all the principals? So I think it was in February. And at that time, they get what we have as a budget book, which I think we've sent to you. And that has all of the allocations for what schools get as their baseline with all of the formulas from each department-based FTE. And so the principals share that with their instructional councils because that is a pretty standard way of looking at how they get funded. Now, I can tell you, and as Mr. Vihil said, that a lot of those, whether they're compliance driven, which means it's the number of students in the classroom, or our internal formula of the 300, we do provide flexibility through compliance to schools. So as schools have more students coming, we are able to look at it to how we provide them the FTE to make up for that enrollment if they get more students. What we're really trying to do, which is really hard in a tight budget, is limit the taking away. So that's the schools that are over 300, but then when the real number comes in, they're at 250. We're trying to limit now you lose a 0.5 because it has to go to another school. And so that is something we're really trying to work on, is how we can limit the movement. And that is why last year the formula was changed to get a better number that would predict what the enrollment is. So we didn't have as much movement of taking money away. Everybody likes when you get the FTE, but if you have to take a FTE away at the beginning of the year, it's very disruptive to the staff and the students.
I have no more follow-ups. Thank you so much for all the information.
Thank you. Who wants to go? Okay, Board Member Jackson.
Thank you, President Tomorito. Board Member Astorga, you took a couple of my questions, but don't worry, I have an extra one. And this is in regards to Superintendent Blakey. I think you can probably best answer this. This is in regards to the performance framework that you alluded to with the equitable distribution and how it is that performance framework is working towards our goals and our guardrails. So just kind of looking forward, how are we going to be able to give more autonomy to our schools, kind of as we're looking forward to next year. And as we move through this new budgeting structure that we're working with. Thank you. So the performance framework is, and I was thinking maybe we need a different name for it because it implies it's based on performance, which it is and it isn't. It's a quartile of how we divide the schools up to provide more support and less autonomy, and less support, more autonomy based on what schools need. And in doing that, one of the biggest places is in the budget. And so that we can make sure that we're really driving the resources where they need to go. I think that next year, really what we're focused on is how with the schools that are in the acceleration and distinguished schools, we work to look at the formula and release more of the type that we put in the budget to give schools more flexibility. Where you'll see the performance framework where we started is really on the priority and emerging, which makes sense because we really needed to get into how we can best support those schools. And that's why they have like the 3 FTE and they have the different supports that they have based on the performance framework. But really going to next year, I think the challenge for our team is to how do we look at giving more flexibility to schools to start to have more of what we would say a zero-based budget, that you have this amount of money, you have to have compliance, you have to have state compliance, but everything else you can move around. We would really need to work with the instructional councils and the budget team to make sure that they understand, like, how do we actually provide our resources for that? And it's some of the work that we did, I think, 2 years ago with ERS. And so really looking at how we can do that for next year for these schools. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we all want money's finite, right? Like there's only so many resources to go around, and we all want our schools to get the most, right? But we have to understand that we do have goals and guardrails that we have set for ourselves, and that we have to, as a board, we have to prioritize to make sure that that budget is addressing the goals and the guardrails. And I think that you have answered that. That was going to be my first question, but you answered that with board member Astorga. So thank you for that. And as I look at slide 4, which really just reminds us of the role of the Board of Education in budget governance, I will just say right now that I am confident that the resources are aligned to support improved outcomes for our students. So thank you for that. Thank you to the budget team for putting this together. I know that this is not something that just shows up today. We started this back in October with going out to the community and talking to them and presenting the budget. So I appreciate the work that has gone into this. I appreciate the new presentation. I think that this is much more encompassing than we have had in the past. So thank you for that. And I'm confident if any other questions come up, I'll think about it, but thank you so much for your work.
Okay, sorry.
I'm done.
Well, go ahead, board member Betson.
Well, first I want to start by saying that I know when I was talking to President Ronalda Morito, in the past, she had said, you know, we need to make these goals and guardrails more humane. And I really appreciate that. I resonate with that. And I am hearing that there are more people on the must hire list than there are jobs to be had. And by quite a significant number. Like, I want to know how many. What are we looking at as far as the number of jobs that are available and the number of people on the must hire list?
President and board member Betson, we don't have an overwhelming number of, we have I think the important thing to know about the must hires is that when we lose enrollment, we're not losing them all from the same school. So some schools might drop in enrollment, but another school, particularly on the west side, is increasing in enrollment. So the must hires really is because in the district, where you lose enrollment isn't all at one place. When you have 144 schools, it can be a variety.
And so it's a shift of where we move the teachers to match the enrollment. So we haven't seen with the number of teachers that just through general attrition and the must hires that there's a worry that we won't be able to place everybody. What's important to know about this must hire list is on the must hire list are also all of our residents. So all of the teachers who were in our residency programs are guaranteed a position for next year. So sometimes like when people see a must hire list, they might think, well, there's a lot of people. Well, we also have a lot of residents that we're guaranteed to give positions to as well. So I don't know if, I'm looking at Mr. Torgerson, if he knows off the top of his head how many teachers are on there. There's 190 teachers and we have
Positions.
and we have over 5,000 teachers in general. So the probability that we'll have that many, and I think half of them have already been placed at schools. So I am 99.9% confident that all of the must hires will be placed at a school.
What about the teachers who took, or teachers or school support staff, who took, went from a permanent position to a short-term position because they were doing like a coaching position or something like that. And now that position has been cut. Actually, the position hasn't been cut. I was talking to somebody, position has not been cut, but that person's short-term position is ending and it's going to be filled with somebody on the must hire list because she took this short-term position to be out of the classroom, I guess. So where are those people going? How are those people going to be placed? What is the plan for those people?
I don't know about that specific situation. What I do know is that it's important to note that when we talk about cuts that we've made to downsize, several of those cuts are at the district level. So we have a lot of the many of the must hire teachers are positions that we have moved from central office back into schools. And so I think there's a misunderstanding that the must hire list are all school based and that nothing is done at the district level. And in fact, we have cut a lot at the district level to be able to move more to the schools. So there could be situations where people were in a district position and they are moved into a school position, which is also part of how we're downsizing the district to match the population. There's also, if a teacher started after the first day of the contract, automatically they're on a short-term contract and they're given that notification as soon as they get hired. Short-term is a little bit different because short-term come after the contract has begun and those employees are never automatically renewed. All of them can apply for positions. And that is true after the must hire list is exhausted, then short-term employees can apply for positions.
I have two other questions. Is that okay? Or would you like me to wait? Okay, one more question.
Everybody will have one at the end.
Okay, all right. So because I've been in a school and I know how the electives, I was an elective teacher, I know how electives play into the schedule. Teachers get prep time when students go to PE, when they go to computers, when they go. So we have heard at Public Forum, teachers come in and say, we don't have enough time to prep. We don't have enough, we're already being asked to do so much. And we don't have the time for it. So when we're cutting PE 2.5 positions, we're taking away from teachers' prep time, less prep time. How is that equating? Like I don't understand it. I mean, I understand it because I've been in it, but I don't understand how you guys are doing it now.
President, members of the board, that is, nothing in that has changed. And I think Dr. Gonzalez explained that earlier. Schools that are under 300 have always gotten, I think the board budget book has been around for 15, 20 years, that schools under 300 have always gotten a 0.5 PE teacher as part of the formula. What has changed is that schools have gotten smaller and the ability to be more flexible with that funding has gone away. So there are 6 schools that were impacted by loss of enrollment that they are under getting a full-time PE teacher. But if you have, in the schools that I have experience with, if you have under 300 students, the students still have the specials to provide the prep time for teachers. That we are by contract have to give the prep time for teachers. And so if schools get stuck with, we can't figure out how to figure out our prep time because we don't have enough specials, then they work with the assistant superintendent to be able to figure out the schedule for that. But a school of under 300 in fact, we've given more flexibility now because they have art and music instead of one or the other. And the small schools used to just have one. They all have the same amount, so they're able to have the specials. Now, if you have more, if we were able to give all schools full-time PE, art, music, and librarian, of course you'd have more flex. That would be great, but that would be at a point where we wouldn't be able to fund something like that of those, about 45 schools that are 300 or under, and to give them all full-time of all of that, it would have to come at an expense somewhere else.
I have a way to do that.
And just for clarification, the Panorama survey is paid for out of capital funds. And so that money is pretty, we can't use the money for Panorama for staff. It's out of capital.
Go ahead. Yeah.
All right, who's next? Go ahead, Board Member Bowman.
Okay, first I just wanted to compliment my colleague Janelle Astorga, Board Member Astorga, for her excellent questions. They're really fantastic. And I also wanted to compliment the superintendent for making sure that every school in the district has specials. So great, that's awesome. I was wondering, my first question is, we have a funding formula. I understand that SEG is closely tied to student numbers. Is there any flexibility at all in the funding formula?
President and Member Bowman, in the funding formula, I'm not sure I understand the question, but the funding formula that we get from the SEG from the state is decided at the state level through House Bill 2, and we don't have flexibility through there.
Okay, so there's no, just to clarify, we've got to take safety, teachers, principals, extracurriculars. Is there any room at all to decide how we allocate that money inside of the funding formula? And the reason I'm asking this is because, we have some important guardrails and goals. And I want to just see if there's any wiggle room on doing more teaching and less of something else.
Yes, President and Member Bowman, members of the board, I think I understand what you're saying. And everything that in the state, the way the state allocates funds, anything that's above the line is flexible, but we do have to keep with compliance to things that are either negotiated or in state statute. Everything that is below the line are very specific allocations that we do not have flexibility with.
Okay. So following up on that, we have some lines when I look at on slide 10, and I'm looking at professional technical services, property services, other purchase services. I see that we're going down on other purchase services in fiscal year 2027, but we're going up on property services and professional and technical services. And part of what I'm trying to do here is there anything we can cut out of professional and technical services or property services so that we can do more for educational service, like more employee hiring? Like I personally, my priority is to make sure that we meet our goals and guardrails. I would prefer to see more teachers longer, more retention, and cut something else, even if, that's just my preference. So and the reason I'd like to cut something else is because I want to make sure we have enough employees to meet our goals and guardrails. So do we have any flexibility on the professional and technical services or the property services or any other category here?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Duran Blakey. Let me take a stab at this, and by saying that if you look at the pie chart on slide 9, you'll notice that the 2.3 billion and how it's categorized on the next page encompasses our capital funds and our debt service funds, which you can see is a very large chunk. And that goes into the property services and technical services of the budget. Really what we're talking about is really the operational budget and the grants, right? When we're looking at the operational budget, we're looking at 85 to 87% of our operational budget is salaries and benefits. And so when we're looking at that 1.019 billion in SEG, 85 to 87% is already salaries and benefits. That only leaves us 15% of that money to do everything else in the district, right? And so when we're talking about flexibility, the idea behind it is we're providing services to students, and that is really staff, right? So we can always take a look at the number of contracts that we have, the number of things that we have, but just know that it's only about 13% of the actual operational budget.
Okay. I'm seeing an increase in property services and an increase in professional and technical services. So for me, following up on Janelle Astorga's comments, Board Member Astorga and Board Member Betson, I would prefer to see find less contractors, find less, it is certainly the job of the superintendent to make those day-to-day decisions. But if our priority is meeting goals and guardrails, I would like to see less money in property services, less money in professional and technical services, find more contracts that are cheaper, do anything we can to make sure that we have those art, have those music, have those PE, have those library. Those are really going to help us with goal 1, goal 2, goal 4. That's where I'm going with that. I'm deeply concerned by what we've heard from parents and teachers, and I did a super WYSIWYG handout on teacher commentary. I have heard amazing stuff. The union did provide amazing stuff on the redirectors and how great they are, but I would love to see, to the extent possible, if we have to make any cuts, I'd rather not see them in staff or teaching.
And President Member Bowman, I understand what you're saying. Unfortunately, all of those items are through bond, or they're all capital funds that we are unable to use in compensation employee benefits. So all of those are funds that are through mill levy, SB 9, different funding sources that are not from the SEG. So they are pretty tied. I'm assuming, and I can look at Mr. Vigil, but I'm assuming that why there is more money in it next year than this year projected is because some of those are either mill levy or bond. They're tied to property. So as property is more expensive in the city, then the amount of money that we get on the mill levy goes up.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Blakey. In addition, property service is also construction. And so the cost of construction is also going up as well. And on a smaller level, I would say that some of those contracts are staff, contracted staff positions as well. So you'll have a lot of ancillary service positions where we're not hiring those as our own staff members, FTEs. We have to use those contractors to provide those services to students. I think.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Behill. That's a good point. So when you see the technical and professional services in there, there are staff that we pay for out of those funds that do not come out of SCG. So to be able to run the district with particularly construction area, construction management, all of our in-house support on capital and construction, they aren't paid for out of the same fund that's paid for out of teachers. They're actually paid for out of this fund because we have the flexibility with the capital money to do that. Which frees up more, that's the place where it does free up more money for school-based staff.
Okay, I have no further questions at this time. Okay. Thank you.
If operational funds are paying for items, are operational dollars being used to backfill capital type expenses? So like Panorama, you said is a capital, or capital fiscal expense. So you can't use it for salaries. So are there operational monies that are being used to backfill capital type expenses that could be used?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Blakey, a very small portion of our operational funds are set aside for like fleet vehicles or equipment that's damaged where we file insurance claims. When we get those insurance claims back, they're posted back to the operational fund, and then those funds are placed in those department budgets so that that equipment can be replaced, things like vehicles or other equipment, but very small portion.
So when you say a small portion, when we're looking at a budget as big as ours,
Right.
What is a small portion?
Right now, we have 500,000 budgeted in the function 4,000, which is capital outlay.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question I have about Title I. So I did talk to several schools that have said that, their Title I funds specifically this year went down. They went from a 50% or from a 60%, our schools got money if they were 60%, then they went down to, they're at 50%. They didn't get funds this year. And so I'm wanting to know what initiative is being, I know being in the schools that parents don't want to fill out that free lunch, the Title I form for free lunches. What initiative are we doing so that we're encouraging families to fill those out at registration, especially at the high school level? Because kids come and register without their parents, and this could give us additional funds. So what are we doing to make sure that this is happening?
President, members of the board member Betson, we actually don't use forms anymore. Dr. Blea, do you want to explain how Title I is now formulated?
Yes. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Blakey, right now, any student who receives federal assistance, so that could be Medicaid, SNAP, TANF, any medical federal assistance, qualifies as direct certification. And so those are the students that are calculated in the Title I allocation. As a separate note, no schools lost Title I funding this year, even though our threshold did increase. So all schools who were Title I for 25-26 are still schools receiving Title I funding in 26-27.
And so how do you guys know if they have like Medicaid or is it like system generated, or do they have to self-report?
They have to self-report, but the State Department works with federal databases to pull that information.
Thank you.
Board Member Astorga, do you have more questions?
I will ask one more question. So given the projected deficit and declining enrollment, what equity trade-offs were made and how are we ensuring that budget cuts do not disproportionately harm vulnerable students?
Thank you, Board Member Astorga. I think one of the biggest things is in how starting last year, the projections were made. I think that's one of the ways to provide the least amount of disruption, to be able to be a little bit more key to the declining enrollment and not fund schools on a projected growth, which is what would have happened prior to 2018. And so being able to adjust upfront, although painful when a school first gets the projection, is much less disruptive to how a school can right now plan for next year to provide a continuity of services. One of the things that I particularly was very concerned about is the amount of disruption that schools have at the beginning of the year, particularly schools that are serving our most vulnerable students. And that means in population shifts, I always tell people when they have their first grade teacher and they love their first grade teacher, and then 20 days in, we have to take the first grade teacher away and make a combo class. All of those things are detrimental to our students, especially when they need so much stability, and school is where they're getting that from. So one of the main strategies that we've changed is being much more conservative on the front end, by having more conservative projections for schools. And we're at a place where, because of the budget deficit, we can't be as flexible by providing, oh, you're close to 300, so go ahead and take the 1.0 and we'll see, hopefully you get those kids. That's a place where we have had to really tighten, that we've had to pretty much go with what the projection is on the enrollment, because we don't have that flexibility based on not just the projection of the budget that we have now that has a deficit, but for next year too. This isn't a problem that is going away. The lucky thing in schools is because we have, basically preschool to 12th grade, we're able to project what our enrollment looks like. And that's the work that Mr. West has done in doing the school enrollment projections. So we can tell what our enrollment is going to look like next year. And it continues to decline because we can see how many kindergartners we have this year. And until the kindergarten numbers go up, we essentially will continue to decline in our enrollment, unless millions of people move to Albuquerque, which would be great. So that's kind of what we use I think to answer your question, really, it's how can we limit the disruption and provide as much stability to the students? And particularly a big thing is in having certified staff. I am really proud of the work that the district and the union and the state have done in these residency programs, because really being able to have teachers and keep them, I think since 2018, we've lost 20,000 students. And the positive thing since 2018 is that the salary for teachers has gone up 34%. That's a big increase and a much needed increase that we've needed for our staff. But because you see that imbalance, we are able to staff our classrooms, which we're very grateful for, but we have less classrooms that we now need to staff.
Thank you so much for all of that. I feel like this is exactly why it's so important that we do the work so far in advance, because then we can project these things, right? And like you're saying, it's not a problem that's going to go away. So I really respect the team and want to acknowledge all the thought processes that go into ensuring that there is stability for our students. And even if there's things changing at the district or state level, whatever that might look like, that's our priority, right? It's our students and our staff. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay, Board Member Bowman. Oh, just in your response, so what I'm hearing is we're making a very conservative projection moving forward. And I guess that was kind of where I was going with my last question is there a way to make that projection slightly less conservative? Go ahead.
Mr. West, do you want to explain how the projection?
I mean, it sounds like there is some flexibility. That's where I was getting at. So you're making a projection, which means it isn't set in stone. There is some discretion there.
Madam President, Superintendent Duran Blakey, members of the board. So the enrollment projection itself, it's the survival rate method that we've discussed multiple times. Where
Yes.
we look at the 3 years of prior data. So the point of the projection is to be exact as possible. So I was within 189 students last time. So in terms of flexibility, I don't know how to answer that because I would have to be less exact, which would be bad.
Well, I mean, there's this idea of, okay, it's great that it's exact, but I'm just not comfortable. I feel like we have big increases, and I realize they're only 13% of the budget or whatever, but we're seeing big increases in property services, big increases in some other areas. And I know it's a small fraction of the budget, but I'm not really comfortable given that we have Yazzie Martinez goals to meet and concerns about, student regulation. I just am looking for room here. And I get that you want to be precise. I like that. That's fantastic. That's very mathy of you. But there's also an argument to be made of overstaffing to get us under control with some of the Yazzie Martinez issues or some of the special education issues or some of the disruption issues that we've heard about repeatedly from parents and teachers. So I realize that that is a not popular position and it doesn't make accountants feel happy. But again, I just would like to overcompensate on the teaching staff and the EAs so that we can reach our goals with Yazzie Martinez, which we're not reaching. We're just not reaching them. I mean, we're way off. We're not reaching our Yazzie or our Martinez Yazzie. We are not reaching them. So I would rather have more staff and get closer to our goals than be super precise and not reach those goals.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Blakey. I think your question is more, can we dig into the budget and see what's in these numbers? And absolutely in the idea of making sure that we're transparent, and answering what your concern is. Yeah, absolutely. Property services, when you see these numbers, we can definitely look at last year and look at specific areas and even down to purchase orders, I guess, if we need to see where those increases have occurred and why they've occurred. We're absolutely, and I'm very interested in that as well. Being here for 2 months, so.
And you and I do a lot of this in our finance.
Absolutely, and like I said, we want to be as transparent as we can, and so we'll definitely look into those numbers and see if we can see where those variances occurred, and we will get back to you.
And Board President and Member Bowman, members of the board, I think that, there's a couple of things just to point out. And one is, I think we do have compliance. So if schools are not matching the projection of what we did, there's a team that meets daily, communicates, the assistant superintendents work with the principals, and we are able to make those shifts pretty easily. They probably don't think it's easy because there's a lot of questions before that happens. But I do want to, point out the third slide, because this third slide is showing how the initiatives are meeting the goals. And so I think that it's important to really kind of align, because another thing that we've heard from our staff is we just don't want to change it. We don't want to do something different every year. And so we're really committed to like, these are the things that we've been working on this year. And these are the promising practices and the initiatives that we'll be working on next year. These are the things that we're funding. There's, the freshman academy and the middle school redesign are done in ways that are addressing what we talked about in goal 4 of how do we create that culture and a sense of belonging for our students. So there are in the details of the budget, these are the priorities. And if schools are struggling on how to spend their money, the assistant superintendents work with them too on like, are you doing things that aren't on here? Because that's where we really do hear that schools feel like, or staff feels like, wait, we're trying to do too much and we don't have enough bandwidth. And that is absolutely true. So if they're working on things that aren't on here, they need to shift because they will feel like they're torn and they're not getting the resources. So this is really, I think it's important to note that this is connected to the strategic plan. These are the initiatives that we monitor. This is where we focus the funding on. And so that really is aligned to where we see growth in the goals.
And Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Blakey, we do have some, I wanted to make sure that we had some support to show you in relation to this slide here. So for instance, we've got our top schools up there. We've got 139.4 FTEs dedicated to top schools, $11.2 million budgeted for that. We've got Genius Hour supplies. We went from $163,000 to $290,000 for Genius Hour supplies. As Dr. Blakey mentioned earlier, we are committed to the middle school redesign, and so we have some FTEs already budgeted for that, and we're looking to expand that as well. We have, and then we have our academies of Albuquerque. So we've got the budget for the program is growing from the FY26 level of $510,000 to $1.3 million for FY27. And the academies of Albuquerque will be in 9 of the 13 comprehensive high schools. We have professional development, both in our operational budgets and in grants for in alignment with those goals. Community school impact coordinators, those are all funded through grant funding, and we braid a lot of funding. I got a really great education from Dr. Blea on how we braid all funding sources together for our community school coordinators, but that is all funded through grants as well. So our grants also provide for a lot of high dosage tutoring, and I do have some numbers on that as well. So high dosage tutoring are funded through a multitude of federal and state grants to the tune of about 1.8 million. So I wanted to give you just a picture of making sure that there is tracking of our goals and our promising practices. In addition, we are implementing our Oracle, our new ERP system, and along with that, we are redesigning our chart of accounts. And so we are designing a hierarchy with our chart of accounts so that it is flexible and we can track certain things. And so we'll be able to create a structure by which we can track this even better. So our old legacy system, Lawson, I think we've had for 20+ years. We're going to be coming into the 21st century with our new ERP system, along with an updated chart of accounts that will be able to track things better for you as well.
And I do want to point out, thank you, Mr. Vigil, for talking about that, because I think it's really important that when we hear from the staff about things like time and resources, that I don't think we talk about TOPS enough on what that elementary redesign is and how much money we do pull out to fund it. The teachers at top schools do work an extra hour, and they have that for collaboration. It is shown to be a very strong initiative that has results in the schools that they're working on as part of the redesign. And I think we also failed to stress Genius Hour, which has been expanded into all elementary schools, because we've talked a little bit about PE and art and music and the specials. It's really important to know that all of these elementary schools have 45 minutes to an hour of Genius Hour time where they're picking activities that they want to excel at, and they learn about robotics and mariachi and all these other things that I don't picture that students are on computers all day either. And so having these are really important. They have 3 recesses a day. Like there's a multitude of things, and maybe we can go more into like at future meetings, what is elementary doing as their redesign? What is middle school doing as their redesign? What is high school doing as their redesign? I think that might help give a broader idea of what's really happening in the schools that we're aligning this budget to.
Okay, thank you so much.
I have only one question. And this is pertaining to, as I look at the data of the charter schools, I just wanted to know because we authorize charter schools, especially the APS charter schools. I just want to know, how is APS ensuring that charter schools with the enrollments under 300 remain financially viable and able to meet required student services? And how does this responsibility factor into equitable FTE allocation and oversight during the annual budget process for both district-run and charter schools?
I was looking at Mr. Vigil because he has experience with charter schools. And I also wanted to, President, quickly point out that our new director of charter schools, Dr. Doug White, is here. I wouldn't make him just answer the question on his first week, but the charter schools do have a little bit more flexibility because we don't approve their budget in that sense that their own boards do. And so I don't know, Mr. Vigil, if you want to explain how charter school budgets work in that sense, and then what the role of the authorizer is.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Blakey for putting me on the spot.
It's only because I know you know the answer, otherwise I wouldn't have.
Yeah, so charter schools have a certain level of autonomy. As a district authorized school, you, the board, are the authorizer, and we have some compliance monitoring as the district to ensure that they are maintaining compliance with all budget and finance related activities, along with their own goals. They do have more flexibility when it comes to curriculum design, when it comes to instruction materials and things like that. So they essentially submit their budgets to us, and as long as they submit their staffing plans, but they do have a certain level of autonomy. When we have some pass-through grants as well that go through the district, and those go through my office to ensure that that those grant applications are appropriate, and then the reimbursements that they send are also scrutinized by our office as well, to ensure that they are meeting compliance with those grant applications as well. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
It does. And then where do we still share, with funding streams in supporting charter schools? What particular areas do we still have oversight?
So I think that our unified applications for our federal grants, and Dr. Blake can speak to this as well, there's still a certain amount of shared responsibility there. I don't, can you help a brother out over here?
You got it.
Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Blakey, yes, all federal flow-through funds, so any federal funds that we receive, which primarily for charter schools are Titles 1, 2, 3, 4, as well as some impact aid, IDEA Part B, and MRI CSI designation funds, which we just reported on last month. Those all flow through our office, in addition to Perkins and NextGen.
So then once it flows through us, then we distribute out? Is that how it works?
So we So we, as APS, when we include federal funds, are also submitting applications on behalf of charter schools. And so their application is part of our application. So we have complete and total autonomy, if you will, ownership of their requirements. So anything related to federal grant requirements, the charter schools, when they want or are asking for those funds, they're agreeing to work with us on all things compliance.
And I know approval, how often do charter schools come up for approval on their applications?
So,
Every 5 years.
5 years.
Every 5 years?
Every 5 years.
What else was there? What did you say you wanted,
Want me to-
superintendent to answer something? No?
Not necessarily, only that, like with the autonomy, they have their own governing council that they have to report to on a monthly basis. They're required to have an audit committee and a finance committee of their own. And so we provide compliance monitoring over their charter application. Have they met the terms of their charter? And so we have a staff member who is in a charter school office that does the compliance monitoring for us here at the district.
I know the board really wanted to know at one time how that all worked, to understand it, because I know that we approve. And then I know many times people just say our direct action, if we don't like it, is disapprove. Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that a little of that was known. Thank you. Okay. We got it done. All right, so we're gonna call to the floor a vote.
We need a motion in a second.
Oh, see, it's been too long just by sitting here, so we need a motion in a second. Who wants to motion? Make a motion.
All right. I move to approve the proposed Albuquerque Public Schools budget for fiscal year 2027, including charter schools budgets, and granting approval for board member signatures on all necessary documents. This is Member Jackson.
And I'll second Board Member Benavides.
Okay, Board Member Jackson, motion to approve the proposed APS budget for fiscal year 2027, including charter school budgets, and granting board member signatures on all documents, and Board Member Benavides second. We call for a vote.
Danella Storga,
Yes.
Rebecca Betson,
No, and I would like to give an explanation. I believe this budget does not reflect the values of my community. I have concerns that cuts are happening closest to students instead of farther from classrooms. I cannot support a budget that reduces full-time physical education teachers, librarians, school-based administrators, and classroom supports that directly impact students every day. As we have heard from our community, regular physical activity is directly connected to students' wellness, self-regulation, perseverance, and academic success. We cannot say these skills matter while simultaneously reducing the very programs that help develop them. By relying so heavily on this cohort survival ratio model, we are starting schools in a skeleton mode and setting them up for failure rather than success. Schools should begin the year fully staffed and supported, not already operating from a deficit. We talk about wanting to attract families back to APS, yet we are cutting physical education, CTE classes, and proposing a budget that will force schools to have overcrowded classrooms. We recognize schools this evening that saw gains in their panorama survey. Most of them were schools that have small class sizes. If you go back and look at them, you will see most of them are they have small class sizes. There is something to be said about that. Also, I cannot support limiting the ability of instructional councils to make site-based decisions as outlined in the negotiated agreement. Our schools and communities know their students best and should have meaningful input into their budget priorities. I have received multiple reports from constituents that ICs are not being given that control over their budget, even to the extent that if they submit their budget the way they want, it will not be approved. I cannot support a budget that adds increased strain on already overburdened teachers and support staff. For this reason, I cannot vote in favor of this budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Heather Benavides,
Yes.
Koikia Bowman,
No.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Bernardo Tomorito.
Yes. The motion carries. All right. Thank you. Community engagement update. We should. 9.2, yeah. All right, we're gonna go ahead and move to item 9.2. And Board Member Storga, can you give us an update on community engagement? Is she there?
I'm here. Sorry, I was dealing with a crying
I was
baby.
like, oh no, what happened?
Yes, so I just want to first start by giving a shout out to the former community engagement ad hoc chair and wish her a very happy birthday. And thank you for being here at a board meeting and celebrating with all of us.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to thank all of the board members who attended the first ever listening session that we had last week. I know we have a lot to learn and a lot to work on, but I think overall it was really, really good. I think part of that learning from feedback that I've gotten from board members as well as constituents is it was hard for us to balance making sure that those who filled out the survey ahead of time, which was 180 voices, were actually acknowledged and heard during the meeting, as well as those who were in person. So again, a learning curve, but we definitely wanted to acknowledge that and acknowledge that the people who were at the meeting in person, we got many questions from them that we would love to answer, and some of them we did answer. So next listening session, which would be in July, we're definitely going to switch it up a little bit more and make sure that those voices who attended in person are actually heard at the table and be more intentional about that. So thank you all for that feedback. We also got some feedback from participants of the listening session for board members to spread out a little bit more during the events, potentially at different tables, things like that, so we can get our board members a little more around the room and not just at one table. So we'll make sure that that's included as well. So there's just a few feedbacks that we've gotten. We're going to be in more discussion, so I don't want to talk too much about that listening session at our next community engagement committee meeting. So if there's any feedback that you wanted to share with us now, I'll give some opportunity for you all to share, but just know that there is going to be space at the committee meeting for a debrief as well. So I'll just pause and see if there's any board members that wanted to say anything about the listening session.
Anybody? We're all okay.
Great, thank you. And like I said, I had heard some feedback from folks, so we're definitely gonna talk about that at the committee meeting and get some new ideas for the next listening session, which is in July, so please stay tuned. But appreciate all the work that went into it from all the staff as well. So the big thing that we talked about last committee meeting that I wanted to bring back to the table is just an announcement of our May engagement event, which is in partnership with the New Mexico United team. And that's on May 23rd. So hopefully all of our board members and even our staff are sharing our link so that folks can get tickets to help support APS. So just a reminder that every ticket that's sold, $4 comes back to us at the APS Foundation. Our goal is still a long ways out, so please share. I want to thank the superintendent as well for having some announcements put out at the schools for some of our young people. I think the biggest goal here is even if we don't reach our goal of selling tickets, we just really want to make sure that our young people are attending this event so that they can attend our college and career fair and make sure that they get those resources. So another opportunity, if you all have any of your connections, would be to have a company or somebody you know sponsor some tickets, so purchase some tickets that we can then give to some students that may not be able to afford to actually buy their own ticket to attend our college and career fair. So just throwing that out there. The next piece of that is we need board members to also agree to attend this event. We have a few roles for you all, and this would be from 6 p.m. to 7:30. The game starts at 7, but we do need board members to sign up to help distribute passports and clear bags during our college and career fair. We also want you there just to greet families as they enter and usher them to our college and career fair. We also have a role of collecting completed passports that the students will be filling out while they're in their college career fair. And the last role would be to manage entries that we have for our prize drawing. So please let us know if you are planning to attend, and you can make that time commitment of, I'll say 5:45, get there a little bit before 6. So 5:45 to 7:30, that's right before the game. If you cannot spend the whole time after and watch the game, then that's completely fine, but we really want you there for that career fair. So I will pause now to see if there's any board members who are able to attend and are able to help us in some of those roles before the game.
I will be attending, board member Tomorito.
Are you gonna send us an email like where we should go, directions?
Yes, we can definitely send that out. I think right now we just have to give who's going to be there so that Miss King knows who's going to be in attendance, and also Miss Albright. So we're trying to figure that out now, and then you'll get all of the information.
This is Board Member Betson. I'll be there.
I'll be there as well, Board Member Benavides.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you would like, you can, I know this is an at a glance as well. So if you want to sign up for a specific role, please let me or Christy know. If not, then we'll kind of put y'all to work when we get there. But yes, please look out for an email. And we'll let you know where to park, where to enter, all of that good stuff. But I really appreciate your commitment to helping this engagement event. And for those of you who cannot make it, because I know it's graduation week and there's a lot of things going on, please just share the link as possible, find out some creative ways so we can get some students to be there, because we have an amazing lineup. We have Sandia Labs, we have our local unions showing up, so it's going to be really great. We want to make sure that those who are tabling have young people to talk to. But that, I believe, concludes my report. Thank you so much.
One question, Janelle, if we're gonna buy tickets for you to donate for students, then do we get them to you, or how is that gonna work?
If you, just make sure you purchase through the link. But yeah, if you would like to donate some tickets, please just email Christy and I, and we'll go ahead and figure out how to do that. My goal is to also reach out to some of our McKinney-Vento young people. So that's my priority right now, but we'll figure out how to distribute those equitably amongst our students.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And Board Member Astorga, this is Board Member Jackson. I do have a graduate, so I apologize that I can't be there, but please give me as many jobs as you want to give me leading up to that.
Yes, no, I appreciate it. And I think that's the same thing that we're hearing from our young people is, well, I have my graduation party that day. So we'll blame United for giving us the graduation day, the graduation day event. But yeah, we're making it work. So again, that's the role that you all can help us play, is making sure that we get young people to show up if possible.
You got it.
Okay. Now we're ready for the grand finale.
Hey, Madam President, members of the board, as we just talked about, it is graduation season across Albuquerque Public Schools. So there's a lot to begin to celebrate this month. Before the board meeting this evening, we had the opportunity to celebrate the superintendent advisory groups. So we just wrapped up our second year of meeting with these 5 groups that represent students, families, teachers, principals, and the business community. I really appreciate all of them these advisory groups, their input always continues to shape our work and in making decisions, and they've done a great job this year. A couple of weeks ago, I attended the Career Enrichment Center's Career Pathway Award ceremony. We had nearly 100 students who were recognized for completing 2 or more years in a career pathway. They represented 6 pathways, and these students have shown strong academic commitment and a clear vision for their future. This year, our students at CEC earned nearly 1,000 industry certifications, which was up from 850 last year. And that is directly advancing our goal 3 to focus on college and career readiness. And thank you for excusing me for a bit tonight as I ran down the street this evening to celebrate our African-American students at the BSU Rites of Passage, their Black graduation celebration. It was amazing. The students were proud, the families were proud. It was an amazing event, a powerful recognition of their achievements and their journeys, and I'm very proud of those graduates. Tomorrow, we have our refugee and newcomer students at their graduation celebration at Albuquerque High. And then we have the Indian Education Senior Banquet on Friday evening this week at Isleta Resort and Casino. These moments reflect the strength, diversity, and resilience of our students and communities. And just let Dr. Albright know if you'd like to join us for any of those celebrations. That turns into graduation. So we did have our first graduation. It's our early one because it's a school that we share with CNM. College and Career High School had their graduation last Friday. Board member Astorga joined me. The 68 graduates not only earned their high school diplomas at College and Career High School, but they collectively completed 4,409 college credit hours. They completed 84 certificates and 77 associate degrees across fields from biotechnology and engineering to automotive technology and nursing assistant. We actually had one of the graduates he completed 6 associate degrees. Right. The president of CNM and I were like, how is that possible? But he did. So that was pretty amazing. Our graduation week does kick off May 18th. And I want to make sure that if you aren't sure of which schools that you are signed up for, please check with Dr. Albright and we'll have everything ready for you. And finally, I want to remind you of what we just talked about, joining us for our Education Appreciation Night with New Mexico United. And I know our Community Engagement Committee has been working on this, and it's a great time to just kind of get outside and celebrate. So it's a very busy time of year, lots of activities, lots of things to celebrate, and just let us know if you'd like to join us in any of these celebrations. It's a great time to see students just so proud and their families so proud. And thank you.
You're welcome. Are you throwing the ball out at United?
I have found a young child to help.
I can't remember if I'm throwing or kicking.
Carrying.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't have to do any
I would love
physical.
No, I'm kidding.
Carrying.
Okay. Next, the president's report. I just really want to thank our public comment speakers, and because it brought some reality, I know, to the board members here. And I know that we constantly hear many stories and what's going on. But I think many times we often forget too that the power lies in what a board can do in creating policies. So hopefully that particular area, as we become more aware of our role and what we can do to impact those voices, will benefit our community members. And before you leave, I really want to just read you a little bit about, since it's Mother's Day coming up, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my mother. And I know with many of you, your mother was your first teacher. My mother, she grew up during the boarding school era and graduated from Rehoboth Christian School, where she sang in the choir, she had a beautiful voice, and learned to play the piano. Through music, she created some of the most meaningful memories of my childhood. Growing up on the reservation, having a piano in our home was rare. Yet, there it stood, a source of beauty, imagination, and peace. I remember my mother playing melodies from Breakfast at Tiffany's, Love Story, and the Pink Panther, and a lot of classical sonatas that filled our home with emotion and warmth. Music became part of how she loved us. She would wake us up to her piano playing, and she would put us to bed with her music. Through her singing and piano playing, she taught me that art could heal, comfort, and preserve something sacred within us. My mother later worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs as a dorm manager. My mom didn't go on to college. She just graduated from high school. Looking back, I now understand the difficult position she carried every day. She often stood between federal policies and the well-being of Native children entrusted to her care. There were moments when I could see the conflict in her, the struggle between following laws, protecting her livelihood, and wanting to speak openly against systems that had harmed generations of our people, including her own. I witnessed how fear, survival, and silence shaped many Native families who depended on federal employment, and having a voice often came with a risk. As a child, I did not fully understand the weight she carried. I only saw a mother trying her best to protect others while navigating systems larger than herself. But as I grew older, I recognized the courage it took for her simply to endure those spaces without losing her humanity. She taught me that leadership is not always loud. Sometimes, if it is found in, it's found in quiet acts of care, in choosing compassion with right systems, and in caring responsibly, even when our own voice feeds constraint. I'm sorry, I got tears in my eyes and I'm having a hard time reading. Much of who I am was shaped by watching her live within those contradictions. A woman formed by boarding school era, working within federal institutions, yet still holding onto culture, music, family, and dignity. Her life taught me that survival itself can be an act of resistance, and that even silence can carry generations of untold truths. I am here because of my mother. I am here because I became an advocate for students with disabilities. I'm here because I learned how to fight not only compliance and non-compliance issues, but I used my words, and I knew based on federal law and statutes that I could still fight on her behalf for the betterment of these systems, and not only for children, but also to know that there is a way to create balance within this world of education. And I knew, if I knew the laws, I knew the policies, knew how to write, knew how to create compliance through filing complaints and civil rights complaints. I then became this advocate, and I sit here today because of those tools and what I've learned. So I thank my mother for that. And I hope that you would take the moment to also thank your mother and the women and men who are our mothers within our families. But thank you for that time. Thank you. So now we are going to go into our closed executive session. We are still here. So I'll let you guys leave for those who need to leave.
Board President?
Oh, motion.
Ask for a motion in a second before you dismiss.
I am sorry. So our next item to consider approval for the Board of Education to convene an executive session as authorized by the Opens Meeting Act is to discuss certain purchases as allowed under section 10-15-1 H6 and procurement code section 13-1-116. Can I have a motion and a second?
I move that we approve for the Board of Education to convene an executive session as authorized by the Open Meetings Act to discuss certain purchases as allowed under section 10-15-1 H6 and procurement code section 116. Board Member Benavides.
And I second it. This is Board Member Betson.
Board Member Benavides, motion to move into executive session, and Board Member Betson, seconds. Call for a vote? Or is there discussion? Sorry. Now we'll call for the vote. Thank you.
Janella Storga,
Yes.
Rebecca Betson,
Yes.
Heather Benavides,
Yes.
Orikia Bowman,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tom Morito.
Yes. And the motion carries.